Okay, hopefully that's us
Okay.
gonna be recorded forevermore. um, right. Well, I like the way you summarized things at the beginning as well about the four main things that jumped out, which was like the food access, the food production, actually making stuff happen, and collaborative working, I think is what you'd said. Um, and also something that you said about like this balance between the coordinator role with the Sustainable Food Partnership and then the partners and how they kind of balance off each other. And I don't know, I almost feel we need to break this down into a bit more as well, because there's obviously the FFA, Fair Food Aberdeenshire Partnership, which is how we got the funding to be able to do this today as well. So I think if we really maybe focus on that first, and then also the food hub element, because we've had multiple debates about what is a food hub, and is the food hub like the FFA have been focusing on, like Stephen highlighted, it's often about, access to food, because it kind of grew out of the food security meetings that were happening with the council as well, and obviously lockdown and the amount of larders that popped up in the food banks. But then there's the kind of food hub model that we've been discussing within Land Workers Alliance, and I think particularly some of the questions that Coralie asked, which were the ones about the creation of a food hub and the really specific producer questions. And then maybe after that, we could speak a little bit about just the other collaborative working, and maybe how the climate hubs coming into it down there as well. Does that sound okay to everyone?
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll just talk a bit about our Sustainable Food Partnership initially, yeah, and how we've kind of set that up and what we do and who the partners are and that kind of thing. Does that sound all right? And we'll see where we go from there.
Yeah, I think that's good. And then we could see what similarities there are with the Aberdeenshire one as well. And the structure that you've got. I have looked at the website, but we had
what's the governance behind that?
Exactly, because the last meeting that we had was where I saw Stephen. It was one of the subgroups, because there's a steering group and there's subgroups. And at one point we were like, maybe we need to even change the structure, because I looked at the Highlands and Islands Sustainable Food Hub structure, and obviously they've got more paid staff. FFA's only got Stephen, that's like a paid member of staff to try and coordinate everything.
We only have me as well, and that's only like, at the moment it's 20 hours a week, but it's going to drop to 10 if I can't find match funding.
Oh gosh. Okay.
I've been doing a little bit of restructuring with it. I've been speaking to Julie, who's our chair, and just in Aberdeenshire, it's probably the same everywhere, but there's only so many people. And when you have all these different groups, it's the same people that come along to the groups. Mm-hmm. So we're taking the subgroups, because some people changed role. There's now people that are sitting in all the subgroups and the steering group. Yeah. Jessica and Natalie. So I've just done a whole reorganizing of having the steering group and a delivery group, however you want to call it. So that's taken in all the community planning officers into that group as well. So it'll be quite a large group, and then that'll just feed into the steering group. As you say, Abby, it's more about the collaboration at that level rather than them actually doing stuff. But there's a lot happening in Aberdeenshire, and it's just about joining that up, minimizing meetings as well. So I will send that out next week. But I think that'll be a bit more manageable than necessarily the way I don't.
Yeah, I think it does sound different to ours already. I think so I've been working around food partnership structures since late 2014, because I was part of the Glasgow Food Policy Partnership, sort of setting that up in the first instance. So I've got quite a bit of kind of background to draw on, and obviously been sort of involved in sustainable food places and have known lots of other food partnerships for quite a long time, and none of them are the same. There's like every single food partnership has a different structure, a different way of working, different kind of key allies. We talk about allies and the people that are most likely to kind of get what you're doing and or trying to do, and yeah, they're all totally different. They're all totally different. There's no one. There is no one size fits all kind of model,
Mhm.
and that's right, and it should be like that because it should be place based and kind of born out of the people and the groups and the organizations that are kind of active and involved, while also continuously looking for kind of where the gaps are and who's not involved and how we can really so just I guess going back to Glasgow Food Policy Partnership formed off the back of an event at St Andrews in the Square where Kevin Morgan, who's was at the time a Cardiff University professor, but you can look him up. He does a lot of stuff around food and food issues, and he came up and he gave the keynote speech, and he basically like issued this call for action, and he was like, you need to start working collaboratively in Glasgow, pulling all these different groups together. And a few of us stayed back after that event and formed the steering group for the Glasgow Food Policy Partnership, which then went on to several years later employing Rika as the coordinator. And it kind of didn't, before having a coordinator, it was just sort of sitting around kind of going, oh, we've got all these things we need to do and all these things we need to fix, and actually how do we do that in practice? And obviously by the time I left Glasgow, we were co-creating the Glasgow City Food Plan, and now there's loads of stuff going on, and it has quite an established structure, and everyone looks at Glasgow and goes, oh, that's really good. But that's a city with like over 500,000 people, maybe nearly 1 million people or something like that. So you take that you can't move that model to a rural area and go, that's going to work here. So just for context, Dumfries and Galloway is 2,700 square miles. It's the second largest unitary authority, I think, in Scotland after the Highlands. And our population is 150,000. So that's not very many people over a fucking massive area. So that's, as you would imagine, therefore, really dispersed remote rural population. Lots of small farms, increasingly bigger farms as the smaller farms get swallowed up, and a lot of forestry. We have more cypress spruce plantations, forestry plantations down here than anywhere else in Scotland, and more planned. We've got more wind farms anywhere else, and there's more planned. I've just had a letter to my door saying they're going to cut down the woodland directly across from my office window here to make way for getting wind turbine blades through. That's depressing, isn't it? So yeah, a lot of that goes on. And we've got more dairy than anywhere else in Scotland, and a lot of that is intensive indoor dairy production. And that happens down here a lot because we have all these things because we don't have a large population who can say, can you just stop now? And a lot of those people, we have an aging population, as most rural populations are. I think at least 45% are over 65. And so that's only going up at the moment because young people don't stay here because there's no housing and the buses are really shit, and there's no train line. So yeah, there's not a lot going for it for a rural area, but it is really lovely. And we do have, as I said, a lot of smaller farms. So I'm surrounded by family farms here. And they're kind of anything from 75 acres to a few hundred acres, but that's small by Scottish standards. But as I said, some of the mega dairies are kind of, they snap up small farms when they come on the market. And a lot of those cows are kept indoors 365, and the land is what I call terraformed, from lovely rolling hill to flat to grow monoculture barley for silage crops. So that upsets people, but again, no one's really got the sort of, not no one's got capacity, but it's hard to sort of object to that when you're such a small population. The predominant farming and production down here is beef and lamb and dairy. And Mary, you talked about vegetable production. Well, I'm one of 4 market gardeners in the region, so there was this kind of rural myth that you can't grow vegetables in Dumfries and Galloway. I've been told that for so many years. So, well, I am growing vegetables, so that's obviously bollocks. So
it's the same.
You've got lovely soils. Of course you can grow vegetables out there. It's lovely Aberdeenshire with gorgeous soils.
A little bit rocky here and there, but yeah.
used to live outside Huntley, actually, just interestingly, but that only
We've run them
once.
in Peterhead, so
Yeah, you can grow loads of veg up here, but it is just a short season. There's definitely, but you know, that's not impossible.
No,
We get
no, it's
lots of
rural
like,
myths. Rural myths.
yeah.
So anyway, food partnership, how did we get that going down here? So because I'd been doing the Glasgow work and I was kind of like excited about collaborative working in food policy, when I moved down here, I kind of started digging about to see if that kind of model existed here. And at that time, that was before the kind of, you know, massive what do you call it, exponential growth of sustainable food partnerships across Scotland and the UK. At that point, there was still like Glasgow, Edinburgh, Dundee. There weren't really any rural partnerships. It hadn't started happening yet, and so
I remember the first Scottish meeting I had, Abby. There was 3 of us.
Yeah, exactly.
Aberdeen, Glasgow, and Edinburgh.
Right, and you're just like,
Yeah,
where's and there weren't
and
any
now
others,
there's-
were there? And now they're
now
everywhere.
there's like conferences, you know.
Yeah, exactly, and that's great, you know. But when I sort of moved down here, that was the situation. There were hardly any of us that were interested or doing it. I suppose the interest was there, but how do you make it happen? So I just got on the phone, literally got on the phone and started I contacted the sort of people who had the right kind of job titles in the council. I contacted the people with the right kind of job titles in the health board and public health. Because public health had been one of the strongest allies in Glasgow, so it's like, right, well, who are the health improvement people, the health improvement practitioners, because they were all like really on board and got it. You know, Glasgow Centre for Population Health had been like, you know, Glasgow Food Policy Partnership wouldn't have happened without Glasgow Centre for Population Health, in a nutshell. And I contacted Teresa, who was at that point the regional manager for NFUS down here. Sheena from East South West Scotland, that's kind of the regional food group, hospitality sector, food businesses. The biosphere, Galloway and Southern Ayrshire UNESCO biosphere. So this is the part, not all of Dumfries and Galloway, mainly the Galloway bit, and up into Ayrshire, South Ayrshire is a designated UNESCO biosphere. But that comes with it as this quite big organisation that now carry the D&G Food Hub. So they host that within them. So first I got in touch with them. So we're doing sort of land-based stuff as well as community and something else. Businesses, they had the biosphere mark. It's sort of like an accreditation scheme for sustainability for businesses, which is quite interesting. Took a lot of work to pull that together, I understand. So they were the kind of main people and that I contacted, and we started with Zoom meetings because it was 2020. Well, basically I contacted them and I was like, is this model already happening? Are people already kind of coalescing in some sort of collaboration around food? Or is it this siloed kind of working? And they all said, oh no, that's not happening. So the next question was, do you think it's a good idea? And they were all like, yeah, that's a great idea. And I was in the kind of fortunate position, I suppose, at this point of having sold my flat in Glasgow, and had I basically given myself 10 grand to live on for the year. So I just bought land yesterday with the remainder. I just bought 10 acres. I just bought 10 acres, by the way. After 4 years of being down here. Anyway, that's an aside. So I gave myself 10 grand to live on for the first year. So that was like I just gave myself a salary. And because I was living in a truck in a field, I didn't really have any overheads. So I guess that's kind of thought, like, you know, I put myself in a position where I could put the work into A, setting up a market garden, and B, you know, finding out what was going on around sort of food collaboration in the area, and what could I add to that with my skill set and my experience. So that was the initial thinking, like, what can I add to what's going on? And that turned into, okay, it looks like I'm going to have to actually lead this because people want it to happen, and then I know how to do that. So yeah, we started with, say, Zoom meetings. By the end of 2020, we had formed terms of reference, and that remains our sole governing document. So Propagate hosts the partnership, but we our only kind of governing document is a terms of reference, which isn't downloadable from our website, but it probably should be, just so everyone can see it, 'cause for transparency and all that. Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah, go on.
just to get those terms of reference, it took you quite a while of time and effort and meeting
6
up.
months.
So it was, yes,
About
¿verdad?
six,
So it
about
was
6
like
months. Yeah.
6 months. Okay.
Yeah. And at this point, we hadn't had an in-person meeting because it was still 2020.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So, restrictions didn't really lift, did they, until into the following year.
No, they were like off and on again, weren't they? So at this point, how many people, I know you said you contacted council, public health, like how many people were in the partnership at that point when you were creating the terms of reference?
Probably about 6 or 7.
Okay.
6 or 7, yeah. And I think it's important to just start. And I was talking to the borders people about this as well. They also wanted to sort of send a conversation. They were just like, but when do we actually have a meeting? It's like, just have a fucking meeting. Jesus, start having phone calls and just have a meeting. How hard can this be? You've got to start somewhere. And you start with the people that are up for it, and the organizations that are up for it. And then as you kind of, do more get on board and kind of go, oh, actually we want a part of that. You just make sure you remain inclusive and relevant, I suppose, as well. That's the other thing. Inclusivity and relevance. So be doing something useful. So yeah, we got started. And I really still can't remember, but I think it's a good year before we had an actual in-person meeting. So we managed to get quite a lot done on virtually, and it's amazing how many people how we adapted to that so quickly. But I think it was kind of helpful even for living in this region, really sort of super helpful, because to get to any meeting you have to drive for about an hour and a half anyway. So being able to just sort of join a meeting online is kind of handy.
I think same with like FFA. We only had our first in-person meeting was last November, wasn't it? And that's what, 2 years of just online meeting. But then actually, I think because it was online, I think you get more people that can come online than you can turn up in person, can't you?
Sure. Yeah. Oh, well, our meetings are hybrid, so there's more and more locations across that have a hybrid facility set up. So we move around Dumfries and Galloway, and we always choose a hybrid location so that we can have people joining on Teams now rather than Zoom, and people that have made it in person, great, and that seems to work, and people are kind of used to that now as well.
Have you had to do Teams rather than Zoom? We've had issues with the Health and Social Care Partnership and NHS because obviously they're restricted of what they can use.
Yeah. They can't access Zoom very easily. It's quite annoying, and it's more annoying for me because I used a Linux operating system, which doesn't like Microsoft, or Microsoft doesn't like Linux. Anyway, so yeah, there's a lot of incompatibility there. I have problems with Teams. I can't set up a Teams meeting, so I have to get our chair to do that. That's Eva from the college, Dumfries and Galloway College. So yeah, from the beginning, so the chairperson was Marie from the Galloway and Southern Ayrshire Biosphere, and her realm is so the business side of it. So she kind of looks after the biosphere accreditation and looking at sustainable businesses and environmental businesses across the region. So she's really good, but really busy. So she chaired the partnership for like 2.5 years before handing over to Eva Milroy, who is the business and partnerships manager at Dumfries and Galloway College. And also really likes making bread. Let's think about this as I'm talking. It's very nice to have little bios on our website of who's actually involved, because we don't have that. And that's maybe something we should have.
Is that college like is it one of the SRUC agricultural colleges, or no? Is it just the regular? Okay.
SRUC are based here. They have a farm on the Crichton campus, but and we also have a University of Glasgow outpost here. That's the School of Environment and Sustainability, which is relevant to what we do, obviously, but But they're kind of peripherally involved because there's a learning for sustainability partnership as well. So yeah, I guess I'll come on to sort of the subgroups and the work themes. So from the outset, we kind of stuck with the SFP work themes because they work, right? There's no point reinventing the wheel. That work's already been done. And the 6 work themes that I'm sure you're all familiar with, Stephen certainly will be, they're a good catch-all. There's nothing really missing. They cover the food system quite nicely, and everyone can see quite clearly, I think, where they fit into which theme, where their work fits into which theme, and why. So the meetings started as meetings do, I guess, with more information sharing kind of stuff, and people just having an opportunity to talk about the work that they were doing. And then by the end of the first year, into 2021, we'd developed the first kind of action plan that was kind of looking at, where were the gaps. So we're talking about the work that was happening, but trying to identify gaps along the way, and where different partners could kind of collaborate and work together to try and sort of fill some of those gaps. In 2021, then we also set up the regenerative farming network. That kind of sort of part of the partnership work, but also propagates works. It definitely sits under propagates, but it's also, you've got a seat at the table for at the partnership as well. So we have 2 farming groups represented, NFUS, although they're quite forward thinking in this area, I have to say, and that the manager has changed 3 times and they're still really good, which is quite a relief. Yeah, and then the Regen Farm Network. Yeah, it was interesting. The NFUS person, Teresa, when I first spoke to her, and I was just like talking about sort of local food and better production, all the rest of it, and she was on board immediately. There was no kind of conflict of interest there at all for her. It was just like, yeah, that's absolutely, we need more sustainable farming, and we need more local food systems, local food systems. Brilliant, because I was kind of nervous about that conversation.
So that with the National
Farmers Union Scotland, generally representing, big ag conventional farming.
Yeah, I think that's our missing link, is agriculture and fishing. I think we're generally in quite a good place. I was just looking at the updated list. We've got 14 partners around the steering group. Don't want it to be too much, because anything after that's generally not a constructive meeting sometimes. How would you go about managing the partnership? Because obviously we're still missing a couple of links there, and we've already got 14 members. We've got some really great members. We've got NHS Grampian, and and our local authority are very committed to the partnership.
That's good.
Got funding from both of them. So yeah, we were just really lucky with our relationship with the council, and they were the ones forward. So that's the two links that we're missing. But I'm also quite conscious.
Farming and what?
Fishing sector. Peterhead's, like biggest fishing port in Europe, I think. So it's important we need to get them around the table. Again, I think it's a bit like the council. It's a hit or miss of who you actually get in contact with. So I've been exploring different people and not getting very far either sectors, to be honest. I've had a chat with someone from SRUC, and they can really help in a different kind of way through more of connections through each key area. They can contribute something, so they're kind of on board as and when required.
I think that's okay, though. I think that's all right if people are engaging as and when they can.
That's fine.
As part of the main group, I guess. I mean, just NFUS for us have always been on board, and that's been, I think, really helpful for sort of really quite constructive conversations, because it's a very very farmy region. So maybe if it's a big it is a big industry in Aberdeenshire, isn't it? So probably there should be a sort of key partner. And you talked earlier about subgroups, Stephen. We don't have any subgroups at all, and it remains on the agenda as should we have a subgroup. And what we've done is form short life working groups and short life subgroups for specific pieces of work when they've been needed. So for example, like, you know, co-creating the action plan, that was a subgroup of biosphere, college, public health. That was kind of it. Yeah, sort of 4 of us and myself, and we were sort of tasked with pulling together all the kind of different pieces of evidence that we had.
That's good to know, because I'm not a big fan of the subgroups. I mean,
it's like, what's the point in them unless we're actually going to do something?
yeah.
And also, we didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so you kind of look at what's already happening, and there's already there's already a poverty and inequalities partnership, and subgroup 1 of the poverty and inequalities partnership has a food focus. It's just like, okay, well, that's healthy food for all anyway, so that's fine. So long as we've got a link in there, and we have, then that's okay. We've covered that. And then what was the other one? Yeah, so there's already Sheena, who is the regional food group coordinator, and yeah, so she's kind of food business and hospitality. They've already got a kind of sector group, so that, so long as that then feeds in, you know, that's okay. That's kind of got that bit covered. And then what's the other one? Yeah, I think this one's quite unique to D&G. I think we have the Learning for Sustainability Partnership that the council convene. And the Learning for Sustainability Partnership is lots of different stakeholders who are all doing different levels. So some school, like formal education, college, etc., university, a part of that as well. But then also, you know, community-based practitioners, the DG OWL, the Outdoor Woodland Learning Group. Yeah, so anyone that's doing kind of outdoor sustainable learning are part of that group. So that's the kind of education kind of link. So yeah, there didn't seem to be any point in setting up subgroups when these groups already exist, and all you need to do is make the connection and make sure that there's kind of, they're all feeding into each other and everyone kind of knows what each other is up to. So I guess my role isn't to go to all those partnership meetings, but it is to make sure that we've got those connections, and that there is a kind of flow of information and communication, and that we're able to take some of the principles that we're talking about at partnership level, about fairness and dignity, for example, and equity, and, you know, moving away from food banks to pantry models and that kind of thing, and making sure that those kind of views and those that are being heard at subgroup 1, which they weren't actually before we turned up. It was all about food banks. They were still talking about food banks, like up to, you know, the middle of last year. They were still talking about food banks, and we're just like, has anyone thought about dignity? So totally new for them. So that was quite interesting. Yeah, so subgroups and working groups as and when they're needed, but not getting hung up on having to have a subgroup for each of the different themes, because yeah, there doesn't seem to be much point.
Yeah, it doesn't work. Yeah, Anna and I were talking the other day that we probably need something separate for economy and procurement because of a project we were discussing. So that'll be a group as and when required. Yeah, just try and minimize thing.
So
funneling everyone's kind of aims in the right direction.
Yeah. And then so the main purpose of the partnership then is to kind of agree the set of principles and overarching outcomes that we're all working towards. And then just trying to make sure that all the work is kind of being kept on track. So we're kind of, you know, monitoring ourselves against the 3-year action plan now. And you know, and continuously looking to identify where there are gaps and who's, you know, and if there's a gap, then what can we do to kind of collaborate together to fill that gap. Yeah, the relationship with the local authorities is interesting. There's been a struggle with them from the get-go. Well, it's not from the get-go. For the first year we had Simon Fieldhouse, and he's, I'm still not even sure what his job title is these days, but they just keep restructuring the council, and they keep sort of changing the sort of goalposts. And so for a while, Sarah Farrell was involved quite you know, so a lot. She was the climate action officer, just as climate action officer, but I saw her at the Climate Hub meeting recently, and she was like, "I've been told I'm too busy." So we've kind of like trying to escalate it to the sort of head of the what do they call them, the leader, that's it, the council leader at the moment.
I found the climate and sustainability team at the council quite tough to crack.
Yeah. I think on a personal level, they're up for it and interested, but they keep getting told that they're not allowed to by their seniors.
Sounds quite familiar. Yeah.
Interestingly, the team that have been most engaged are school meals. Despite them constantly saying we're doing everything right and it's all really good, look at what we do, it's great. It's not, but they think it is. But they always come to meetings. They're very engaged with what we're doing, and I think there is a sort of trickle effect of thinking more about kind of they just started doing, for example, a whole piece of education around eating more vegetables. Great, because that wouldn't have happened before. And yeah, I'm going to try to get along to the primary steering group and speak to catering managers, because they have a great opportunity to actually do things quite interestingly in Dumfries and Galloway schools, because 99% of the schools have got a food preparation kitchen, which means they can cook. They do cook from scratch, and that's quite unusual, I think, because certainly in Glasgow it's none of them. They're written all out, and it was all like made in one big central location and then reheated. So yeah, there's an opportunity to do something potentially quite interesting to link in with local producers, and do something a bit like the Welsh courgette pilot, but in miniature. That's kind of what I'm aiming towards anyway. It's like, can we get keep giving them evidence of other projects that have happened that have been really good and really interesting. It's like, look, we can do something like this, they're really good. So they're really open to that. So yeah, and also the education services to the Learning for Sustainability team have been a consistent partner as well since the beginning, and really enthusiastic. So yeah, it's not true, I guess, to say that we haven't had council involvement. We've had council involvement for a few different departments, but not like whole council buy-in. And Glasgow struggled with that as well, right up until the penny dropped at chief executives level. And that's when things really started to shift in Glasgow. Because before that, it was kind of land and environmental services coming to the meetings, and that was the only stakeholder involvement from local authority there at all. So yeah, we have different people from different teams and different departments, but not kind of like the core of the local authority, which is in my experience, that's when you see actual shift happen. So yeah, not to sort of put down all the work that those excellent humans do in their jobs as well, and the progress that we are seeing there. So yeah, what else?
I'm just looking at, it was actually some questions Natalie sent me on WhatsApp last night, and I think as you've been talking, you've covered quite a lot of the bits, but she just has put in here, so it's about the organizational structure, which you spoke about, created networks, partnerships you spoke about, NFU, other growers, council, and then funding. So
yeah,
I think that's probably an important one, especially because you said if your hours are going to drop because of funding, and then Stephen's always looking for funding. We have within Fair Food Aberdeenshire, I've been lucky, and we've just got, is it 10k from Health and Social Care Partnership, and then there is another.
Yeah, so I'm funded from until March 2025, and yeah, we just got 10k from NHS Grampian as well. So
brilliant. Yeah. So yeah, I guess the only other piece that I forgot before we move on to funding and that kind of thing is, I guess the other thing that we do collectively as a partnership is the local food gatherings. So that's every sort of October, November. We organise 4 local food gatherings. I guess it's a bit like a food summit, but we have it in 4 different locations across the region, with about 25 to 30 people at each, rather than having one big event that we're trying to get hundreds of people to come to. So that makes them quite specific and regional, and they're always in different towns, villages. We've never been to the same place twice in the last 3 years. So we had the first round of those in 2021, in that little bit of restrictions being lifted, and they've always been in person, and they kind of follow a similar format. So we have a kind of what do we have? We have three speakers from different projects. So maybe a farmer, a community food project, and a local food business, talking about what they're doing around kind of sustainable food in different ways, and fair food and healthier food and all that kind of stuff. And then a lovely lunch, and then discussion tables to look at what needs to happen, what more of, what the barriers are, and what the opportunities are, and what else needs to happen. And the action plan, this here action plan that you can download from the website, or I can send you a few hard copies, has been formed from the back on the back of those kind of the last 2 years worth of local food gatherings, plus other outreach work that's happened, plus feeding in from the Poverty and Inequalities Partnership and the Local Sustainability Partnership and that kind of thing. So it's all of that is what's co-created the action plan that we've agreed to work around as a partnership. Yeah, and we'll carry on having those. That's kind of going to be funded by the Climate Hub, actually, this year, later on this year. So yeah, funding. So
Abby, just a question about that. When you say that the partnership delivered the food gatherings, do you mean you?
Yeah, but definitely in collaboration with, yeah. So the public health are great, and they've been very very involved in helping out with those. Dumfries and Galloway College have been really helpful. NFUS would be helpful. So they come on board as facilitators. So I do the bulk of the kind of like venue and the community food network. We have Dumfries and Galloway Community Food Network as well. Sits under Propagate as a project, but it's a kind of, yeah, it's as most community food networks are, it's linking together all the kind of community gardens and community meals, community kitchens, pantries, etc., that are doing community food kind of activities.
A bit like the Seafine up here, really, isn't it? It's community food initiative, nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking of doing something similar with each community planning area in Aberdeenshire. Who's going to help deliver this? Yeah, maybe the community planning partnership.
Yeah.
We'll have those like, yeah.
And we go for like very low key, well not low key, but big enough community venues, but very much based within sort of, local communities. Yeah, no, they've been really good. They've always been really good. And people kind of come away. We do one word feedback at the end. And people say inspiring and positive and all the happy words.
Well, I think that's something that we haven't been able to do up here, and it is so important. And the main kind of social food gatherings that happen, particularly one that's coming up, it's part of this like Opportunity Northeast, and it's got this big seed pod multi-million-pound funded project that's also funded by Just Transition, but it's all aimed at like high-end, your whiskey and your gin producers and this, and I think that's something that we'll definitely come to speak about later. But we need the opportunity for people to just get together and have a blether and share food and bake bread and just I
do agree. On the last it was 2 weeks ago or something that the Land Workers Alliance organized a meeting, a get together with local producers, and it was, as you said, a lot of happy words, but a lot of useful thoughts, and people were very keen on keeping up with the trying to meet up despite of everybody being busy. But I could see that how it could be possible to organize from perhaps starting from a small, but organizing an event that would at some point be as representative as the event that you mentioned, Francesca, with the high end and everything, but just for other sort of actors, or other sort of groups.
I agree. I
just put the link to the page that on our website that kind of sums up the food gatherings for this year. And you can download the reports as well. So and also this year, that last year, sorry, this is November, a few months ago. And we do try and pull together it's not just for producers and land workers, and it's not just for food businesses, and it's not just for health workers and educators. It's literally it's for anybody working, across food in different ways. You know, volunteers in community gardens and like health board workers and everybody. It's like, come on, let's all get together and have a nice chat about food. And it's really, and obviously, you know, the people that are there steer that conversation, but you get some really interesting results and feedback. Yes, we launched the action plan at the gatherings last year, and said, look, this has been based on the last 2 years of gatherings, but it's not set in stone. It has to be open and fluid and flexible, and that's just a 3-year action plan. But you know, we're constantly looking to look at what else needs to happen. So
I think it'd be worth, maybe we could apply for the Scottish Community Alliance Community Learning Exchange, and actually a group go down to one of your gatherings, if that's possible. Like
they won't be until November though, but yeah. Well,
that's okay, but you know, it would be nice to see what it's like. But I do think the opportunity for up here people to get together, also if we could get funding, then the local growers and producers, that's where the food comes from, and they could get paid for actually, you know, showcasing their food as well. So
yeah, we do also have, I think, like your big whiskey event type thing, there is also Larder of the Lowlands down here, which is generally for higher end food businesses. That's targeted at, and to showcase their products and for buyers to come. It's kind of like big producers and big buyers kind of event. Although smaller organizations do go, and the Food Hub's going to go along this year. You know, and then for community food projects, the Community Food Network has meetups across the region as well. But that's and online. That's very specifically around sharing knowledge and skills within the community food sector. And obviously we have meetups as the Farmers Networks as well. So with a conference next week, actually, we've got Farming for the Future, planning for profit and nature, which I'm co-organising. With my Regen Farm Network hat on, co-organising with NFUS and the Biosphere. So we're co-organising one event together next Thursday.
Is that in person or is that?
Yeah, in person. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I was just going to say, actually, so I was just going to say that I would say it's very noticeable up here that the actual small scale food growers don't go to anything. I'm probably about the only one who shows my face at things now. And I think some of my task this year is really to find out why they don't come now, why they're feeling, because even at the Land Workers Alliance group that we had, it was really noticeable that there was a lack of people who actually were land workers there, which is quite unusual. I just realized I have met you face to face, Abi, because I went to like years ago, we went to Bow House just before it was actually every day like that, and that was really noticeable that most people that were there were small scale land workers, and that's very rare that up here they are. If you go to meetings, they're somehow either funded land workers or not land workers, which is fine, but I think the small scale growers are not, or producers are not engaging up here at all in these things, and so their voices are not being heard. But at the same time, they have to engage, but I don't know what's stopping them, whether they actually feel that their voices are not going to be heard. It's a bit of a chicken and egg situation, but they're actually, more than anything else, I would say they're the people that are missing from every single meeting everywhere up here. Yeah,
and they're not necessarily members of LWA either.
They're not necessarily, but even the ones that are not turning up. So it was interesting, and they were like, for that group, there were a few that just didn't manage to come. So a lot of it is just time, and I mean, definitely most of them are on their knees now and struggling to survive. And I know loads of people that are just not bothering planting this year because there's just no point. So that, you know, it's a bit of a kind of, it's disintegrating for them, but at the same time, it doesn't seem a way to stop it disintegrating. And some of it has to come from them, but at the same time, I can understand, because I go to so many things where the conversation all starts as if food just magically appears and they haven't spent 80 hours in a field doing it, and it's all about that and all about affordable food, which affordable really means you don't get paid, in because that you're not determining the affordability. The person above you who has no idea of the cost of producing food is determining affordability. So yeah, I would say that that's a really major issue up here. And unlike you, we probably have more larger farms than smaller farms, and there's a lot of issues around. A lot of the small farms have either been, again, assimilated, that i.e. that they're not farms anymore, or very rich people have bought the houses and the fields are just then rented out for sheep and or contain horses. And the policy in the council is very much anti having a house on any land at all, even if you're working in a business, and they don't care, and they're not following the MP4. They're pretending to, but they're not following the new planning. So everything ends up wasting huge amounts of public money and time, going down to the Scottish Reporter to then be told they have to do it because it's actually policy now. So
Policy now, yes.
yeah, and you can't just rewrite the policy and pretend you're following it. So it's basically what.
There's a lot of echoes there in the conversations that we have within the Regen Farm group, and I think if we didn't, so obviously some members of our Regen network are LWA members, but not all of them.
Yeah, they don't have.
No, so it's kind of I am also an LWA member organizer for South West Scotland, and that's probably more of the LWA stuff that I do is member organisery kind of type things, but yeah, that crosses over a lot with the regenerative farming network, and yeah, we have a lot of those similar kind of conversations, and I think it's that having a platform where people can air these grievances is just really important, whether that's just like an online Zoom call between producers or a WhatsApp group, or however that sort of manifests, so whether you can start these conversations if people aren't feeling isolated, and then those conversations starts leading to solutions. That's where you can start nudging the conversation towards okay, well, what we're going to do about it, kind of thing.
I mean, obviously I'm a little bit biased, but it does feel that if you don't increase the amount of food you produce, you can't have food access.
Totally. I mean, we're Scunnard, we import 60% of all our vegetables, and that's
it's even more if you go by area up here. It would be
it's more here as well.
I think as well, like what Mary was saying about the amount of producers up here, I think two of the sort of more main like organic veg box schemes, there was Wendy Seal at Vital Veg, who's very sadly just last year she's not doing her business anymore. And then where I used to work at Lembas, which was also an organic wholesaler, they've reached retirement age, and there are a few like new ones popping up, but then trying to get those people to come to things. I mean, not this weekend just past, but the one before was only the second in-person Landworkers Alliance gathering that we've managed to coordinate up here. And some of the key people that are the growers, like Rose, who's got her CSA, they didn't come either because they're too busy or whatever reason. And I've been trying since the start of being within Fair Food Aberdeenshire to get growers to join one of the subgroups or come along to steering groups, and it just isn't happening, is it? And
it's really hard.
Part of that is people are self-employed, aren't they? So they're giving up their time to come. So if somebody's in a job, so I mean, these days we've got South of Scotland Enterprise around the table and Dumfries Abbey College, and everyone's in a job. That's they're paid to be there to some extent. But when people are self-employed, you're asked them to give up their personal time. So can some of your funding be redirected to actually cover people's time to make it possible for them to attend without eating into their valuable other work?
I think also talking in the partnership thing, it's about when you're a single small scale farm or something, you don't come with a big organization behind you, so you don't have that clout or objectives, and you're quite often just told to be quiet and you end up being quiet. I'm quite good at suddenly being quiet, saying my piece and then being too quiet. And yeah, I think it is difficult because you don't have that organizational objective behind you, and you also therefore don't have a lot of the resources to do any actions behind it. You actually need somebody to take on your points and action them. Because other than going back and growing food, which is a really important thing, you don't have any other actions that you can really take, which I think has been a noticeable disadvantage, I think, so that all these decisions keep happening while you're in a field, and then you just kind of come back and it's the same. And I think also what I was quite noticeable for me was kind of having been in conversations, like especially with Nourish, like nearly 10 years ago now, those conversations are just happening here. So I can see what Stephen was saying about getting any delivery, because we're just having the conversations that lots of people were having 10 years ago.
That's interesting.
Which is quite interesting for me. It's even slower than the Highlands.
Right.
Well, maybe not. They were like 20 years ago. But yeah.
But I don't know. It's like a lot of these conversations are only just happening here as well. But you still got to. Yeah. I think this is always new people coming into the conversation, so there's always going to be an element of other folk catching up. So it always feels like you're reinventing the wheel. But at some point, you're just kind of going to go, well, look, everyone, this is what we've done so far, and because there will be folk, I'm sure, in Aberdeenshire who've been involved in. Wendy, for example, a good case in point. She's been doing local food stuff for donkey's years.
I think there's just no real sense of coordination or collaboration, maybe.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe it is that people are now coming together, so they're having the conversations they've been having elsewhere.
Yeah.
I think my hook when I've been sorry.
Go on.
I think my hook when I've been trying to reach out to producers is not that they're coming on to develop some kind of food plan, but as you say, is to give them a platform and somewhere to vent those views. Is there a list of small producers or just producers? I've been told I could get one through economic development at the council, and I've been promised a few times, and it's always passed on to someone else to email me. And I don't know even if this elusive list actually exists.
It's difficult anyway, because data on farms under 3 hectares is not collected anyway. So most of
I can't imagine economic development would know any at all.
They wouldn't even be registered to environmental health or something.
I suppose the only way you would know is some of them would be registered to environmental health. Most of them would be in some ways have like a environmental health certificate, even if they were if they weren't doing anything other than food, like farm gate, they should have an environmental health.
Whether that's up to date or not.
Not if it's just veg, though. I mean, that's what I was always told. You don't have to.
No, we need one here.
Just doing vegetables. I've tried to contact Environmental Health Now Council, and they're just like they don't get back to you. So
yeah, I have spoken to someone at Environmental Health, and she was quite useful, but she was one of those others at the council that was supposed to send me this list of producers. So yeah, I mean that would make it a lot easier, because I looked to see how I can contact food growers, and it's out-of-date information on the internet, and of course they can't all afford to just stay on a website, and it's difficult to find those contacts.
Probably more of a local knowledge thing, isn't it? It's like
it is,
somebody needs to start putting together a spreadsheet, or a Google Drive collaborative spreadsheet where you can start putting in people's contact details that you know of.
Anna, you've already started something like that anyway, haven't you? I don't know where you got your contacts from, but you've got quite a big list, didn't you?
Is that Anna?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, Steve, I missed up. You were talking to me. Yes, I got last year. I was part of my time was to identify a small particularly farm garden farm. Market gardeners and horticulturalists in the Mar area, and it took me a while. I need a lot of like a digging in Facebook, and I drove all the way Mar looking for kind of a, trying to make like a direct observation, but it was really time consuming. It was enjoyable. When I identify a new actor, but well, I do have in addition to just market gardeners, I identify a wider range of actors related to food, but everything is just in the Mar area because of that was the focus of the job. But yeah, I share with Stephen the idea of perhaps setting up a sort of call or campaign or something, inviting and calling for small scale producers to kind of approach and to register, or I don't know how to say it, and to get into this directory or list of local producers, and we could explain what is the purpose, how of course the information is going to be used, and perhaps we would be able to gather a larger group of small scale growers, and perhaps we can also ask in the sending in the form to be filled up, like if they know other business that we could contact eventually. So probably doing a little bit of calling people, but also doing a snowball kind of a research or something like that for people. So it was the only way I thought we could manage to with the time and resources that we all got to start building that list of or directory of growers.
Yeah. Just pooling knowledge, isn't it?
Yes.
Just because you mentioned campaigning, I just remembered about the obviously LWA Small Farms Day of Action, which you probably already know about, and I know it's a long way to Edinburgh, but I'm going to try and get there as well. It's a long way to Edinburgh from here as well. But yeah, 19th of February, rally outside Scottish Parliament to campaign for better support for small farms. That is also linked to the upcoming LWA horticulture campaign as well, to sort of highlight the barriers and the issues, all of which we've just discussed here, around sort of more sort of agricultural, smaller scale horticultural production, which, yeah, I mean, definitely a lot of that here is also bound up in other rural issues like housing and infrastructure and transport and everything else. The kind of increased cost of living when you live in a remote rural area because the shop's more expensive, not that kind of thing. So yeah, it's kind of, you can't really separate those things, can you? It's all bound up, and the horticulture campaign isn't just about access to land and training and skills and knowledge. It's also about how to make how the other things. Yeah. So yeah, I think everyone's just tired. Sounds like everyone's just tired. People have been doing growing local food for ages, have been banging their heads against brick walls for ages, but there is change coming, and I think trying to get people excited about coming on board with a campaign that's got national impact is maybe a good hook in, but definitely offering some sort of compensation towards people's time if you ask them to be on steering groups. So
exactly, that is important.
Essential, really. Just because we didn't talk about funding, and that was a question a while ago, just to address that really quickly. So as I said, for that first year, I self-funded, but then towards the end of that year, Sustainable Food Places had their development grants available for kind of rural new co-ops and new partnerships, specifically kind of rural partnerships, the kind of devolved nations development grants. That was only £5,000 originally, so I got that, and then that led to a coordinator grant of 10 grand, which
is that also Sustainable Food
Places. Yeah, and then I managed to match fund that with Scottish Southern Electric Sustainable Development Fund, So Dumfries and Galloway was one of their priority areas. I think I was quite fortunate, got in there early when they first kind of opened the fund, before they really had a kind of good way of managing it. So they didn't really know what they were doing. So
I missed that. So who was the
Scottish Southern Electric Sustainable Development Fund, and now it goes through what you call them, Foundation Scotland, and they're hard work. And I think they've kind of looked at the areas that they cover in Dumfries and Galloway, and it no longer covers. But we're kind of region wide, obviously, but it doesn't cover our bit specifically.
Do you have a decent third sector interface up there? Because
third sector Dumfries and Galloway is good, and they've got a funding directory and weekly funding updates. We have a lot of wind farm funding down here, so there's lots of that to tap into potentially, and that's where the Scottish Southern Electric's funding comes from. So basically, you had funding going into the third year of funding from them. So they funded £10,000 in the first year that match funded that SFP grant, and then at the beginning of last year they committed to 2 years of funding at £30,000, so £15,000 a year. So we're now going into year 2 of that, but yeah, obviously there's no SFP grant, so I've been trying to get match funding for the other half of the kind of role, and it's been really difficult because the health board don't really have any spare cash kicking about. The council are a total sort of structural mess and don't have anything spare. I think the problem is that, as I understand it, the budget allocations for different areas is based on population, and with a population of 150,000, Dumfries and Galloway ends up with a really quite small part of the overall pot, but they've still got to deliver services across a really quite large rural area. I don't think that really comes into the thinking around it. So, and the other problem is that the health board has a whole chunk of kind of like middle management people who are quite well paid for doing, like, I don't know what they do. What do they do? Yeah, and because you can't sack people in the NHS, or I guess you might use redundancies and stuff, can't you? But it's really hard to sort of, tell people that their job is no longer useful. Yeah, so a lot of the budget's being swallowed from that, and I'm working on a big community engagement event with one of my public health colleagues that's going to happen early in March around kind of sustainable uses of NHS green spaces and that kind of thing. They can't even find a budget for the catering. Like, it's going to be like 750 quid for the catering for his consultation event. Like, there's like, we haven't got a budget for that. Like, really?
My colleague at work was sharing something about the NHS forest project, but it seems more focused on England than Scotland. I haven't had much time to look at it in more detail, but yeah, I think up here, obviously there's like the Vattenfall Trust Fund, which is through Foundation Scotland, but that's also a wind farm. But it'd be good to think that this next year coming of like the Just Transition Participatory Budget Funds that NESCAN help with distribute, that maybe that could be tapped into for Fairfield Aberdeenshire, but again it's a voting process. So but there seems to be a lot more kind of participatory budgeting funding, I think, coming out up here from even the council as well. But then obviously if not enough people apply, then no one votes and everyone's a winner. But but that's interesting though. Like,
the other thing was at the council last year. So my good friend Katie Hagman, councillor Katie Hagman, was chair of the Economy and Resources Committee. She's SNP, and then it was total shit show. Obviously we have like a large Tory votership electorate. That's what they call it, isn't it? It's a lot of Tories down here anyway. And yeah, the council sort of local authority vote was split quite markedly between SNP, Labour and Conservative. Conservative never got enough to have a majority, so the council was formed of a Labour SNP coalition, and and they totally fell out with each other last year. Like big style fell out with each other. Labour were just like, we're not working with you anymore. So essentially, the Tories now run the council, despite not actually winning. It's sort of, it's a complicated structure anyway. So my friend Katie, who was the leader, the chair of the Economy and Resources Committee, is now no longer, and she's been replaced by a Tory. But before she was kicked out of that position, she managed to get a paper through the Economy and Resources Committee to kind of highlight the work of the Sustainable Food Partnership and the need for starting to look at the Good Food Nation Act stuff. And by the end of the year, the last thing she did was managing to get them to commit to £145,000 for Good Food Nation stuff, kind of quite ambiguous. Yeah, and that's meant to be a post within the council, but they've kind of like they've produced all these kind of minutes and sort of, you know, briefings and stuff, and every single minute and briefing says that they are going to work with the Sustainable Food Partnership to co-deliver this, and yet none of them even reply to emails from that particular team. It's like, what is going on? So in theory they've kind of like ring fenced £145,000, but in practice they're not communicating with us about what that's going to be for. And I'm just like, all I need is 15 grand. And I don't want to work for the council, so yeah, if that ever comes up as an actual like job to apply for, I will not be applying for it. And they can have their whatever they're going to do, and I'll just walk away and grow vegetables. But simultaneously, the Dumfries and Galloway Council have now said they've got a £5 million budget hole, I think. So they've basically got they've also need to cut 5 million in different places. So I suspect that 145,000 will be swallowed up into that £5 million black hole, and we won't see any of it anyway. So yeah, funding is an issue and continues to be. The Regenerative Farming Network is funded through the Scottish Government's Knowledge Transfer Innovation Fund, and that's a collaborative piece of work, collaborative project that we've been involved with for 3 years now, that is in partnership with Nourish, Soil Association Scotland, Partnership for Life, Land Workers Alliance, Nature Friendly Farming Network, and the Scottish Cropping Federation. So we all co-deliver farm to farmer knowledge sharing groups across Scotland. So it's part of that, and has been for a few years now.
Sorry, who did it? What was the main grant fund, did you say, for that? Scottish
Government's CATIF, the Knowledge Transfer Innovation Fund. So yeah, lots of they basically fund farm walks.
Well, this is something that I was saying it would be great to happen. Like when I worked at the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust, it was the higher level stewardship fund, and it was all like educational tours around farms that we took like kids to predominantly. But there's a farm tour happening up here shortly that I'm going to, that's linked with SEDA, you know, the Scottish Ecological Design Association.
Yeah. So on Huntley, they asked us to be on the round table for it.
Oh wow, well, nice one.
I'm not going to Huntley. Sorry.
No, I'm not going back up there, but I'm going to go to that because there's other like mad links I've recently had with that guy Roger Paulson, and it just, I think it'd be really interesting.
It's a really good farm anyway, but it's not just CEDA organising that, it's also the Food Farming and Countryside Commission. Okay. So it's a collaborative event between them, and my friend Kirsty, who until a few months ago was the State Farming Lead for Nature Friendly Farming Network in Scotland, is now the Scotland's director for Food Farming Countryside Commission, and she's brilliant, and she'll be there at that event.
Oh, that's good.
She's really small and blonde, and like does that a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Nice one.
I'm sorry, Abi. What was the name of your friend? Because I know
Kirsty.
Kirsty. I know.
Tate.
Kirsty Tate.
Tate.
Thank you. It's just the chair the chair of the commission is also researcher from the James Houghton, Lorna.
That's right.
Lorna, I
what's her
just
face?
escaped her. I miss her surname.
Not
But,
Pate. It's not Laura Pate. It's
Lorna. Yeah, I'm trying to. But
we were talking about her the other day in our group.
Okay. Thank you. You've just been just thinking on a talk with this colleague about what the commission is doing to help small and medium scale growers. But now having also the reference of Kirsty would be also very good to just to
She's Lorna Cole.
Conversation.
Lorna
Yeah,
Cole,
Lorna Cole.
Yeah.
How are people feeling? Do you want a quick 5-minute like stretch, like break, or yeah? I see Mary shaking her head a little bit. Can I just
and then move on to what do you think? Food hub stuff, maybe.
I think maybe
talk about the food hub stuff.
Yeah.
Can I ask one quick question just to clarify in my notes? Did you say the Biosphere hosts the D&G Food Hub? No, that's why
Climate Hub.
That was it. I thought I'd got that wrong.
Propagate hosts the food hub.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I was looking back, and then because obviously Stephen's role at the moment is kind of hosted through Aberdeenshire North Food Bank. But how's the coordinator role? Like, is that through
within Propagate?
Yeah, I thought so. Okay, cool. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, cookie.
So, sorry, what was the Glasgow one, Abby? Was that?
Who hosts it?
Yeah.
Glasgow Community Food Network.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. So it was meant. It just went on for ages as well. When we first employed a coordinator in Glasgow, Rika, and so both first of all, Soil Association Scotland were going to host the post, but they just like lots of HR bureaucracy and they couldn't get their shit together. Glasgow University thought about it. Glasgow the Centre for Population Health were going to kind of step in, but again, HR admin seemed to be just insurmountable. So I was at the time I was chair of Glasgow Community Food Network, and I was like, well, we'll just do it. It'll be fine. So we ended up hosting the post, but she sits within GCPH, and she's got a Glasgow University address.
I didn't realise the Community Food Network was before the partnership.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It has. So Glasgow Community Food Network was very loosely formed in 2009.
Right. Okay.
And then formalized as a kick, and became more obvious to everybody in sort of 2016. So yeah, actually that is after the food partnership was created, but it already existed before that.
Right. Okay.
But in a much more loose, unconstituted kind of format.
Yeah.
On that note, you're just saying they're a kick. So the Dumfries and Galloway Sustainable Food, but what's the organizational structure of that? Like, is it social enterprise or is it a kick, or no, is it
the Sustainable Food Partnership?
Yeah.
Just the terms of reference, doesn't have a legal structure.
That was it.
No, it's just neither does Glasgow Food Policy Partnership. It just Glasgow Community Food Network is a kick.
That's it.
But it's a kick with a large membership. So its members are community food projects, and the board is made up of elected people from those members, as opposed to Propagate, which is a small kick, which means all its members are directors and all directors are members, which is more of a cooperative kind of structure.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
It's complicated.
No. It's like, well, which one are we going to go for? Right, okay, it's what I've got 3 minutes past 11. Come past it back at 10 past. Is that enough time, or do you want a bit longer?
10 past to be right.
Perfect. I'm going to pause the recording. Someone help me, remind me to unpause it when I get back.
Progress.
Okay, so yeah, thanks for all the info so far, Abby. I think it's
hopefully not too bamboozling.
Helpful. No, well, it just makes me realize, obviously, like FFA's is quite far on with what it's got, going on and what's happened, hasn't it, Stephen? But just I think there's definite key things that you spoke about that could be implemented, or just makes us go like, oh yeah.
I think it's time to crank it up a little bit this year. I think we've done all the admin stuff. We've got like our terms of reference. We've got a load of partners on. We've agreed a draft action plan. I think that's a living document. That one. I think that's a tough one. It keeps changing,
Yeah,
and I'm going to have
fine.
to update it slightly. I think we're just putting it down into more bite sizes at the moment. Especially with this restructure, it's going to change it slightly. So it's making it a bit more realistic, because it was quite a long-term action plan, which people aren't really engaging in with as much as if you had something immediate. I think that's the way forward. But I think this year we just need to crank it up a bit and get out there. We've done all the boring stuff, so you can have a bit of fun with food as well. You know, we can do a campaign or an event, but as I say, I think we need to really make those connections.
Yeah, we need to, like you say, it needs to get out there. We need to have those gatherings.
We need to get out there.
Yes.
Yeah, we've done like there's things. I think we need to do our own thing sometimes, because I went to the likes of Taste of Grampian, and there was about 2 producers from Aberdeenshire there, and it was all kind of not what I thought it was going to be. I thought I could go and speak to a bunch of producers, but no, it was all kind of upmarket. Or yeah, they were from Dundee, Inverness, Glasgow. They were with Arran cheese. There was a gigantic queue for Arran cheese. It just wasn't really doing much for the local producers at all. The same as I went to Showcasing Scotland. It was kind of similar. It was all kind of whiskey and but I think we need to think about doing something else.
So let's talk about producers then. Let's talk about the food hub and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of looking at the questions.
There's also, so there's the ones that are numbered 1, 2, 3 were Mary's question. So I don't know if Mary, you just want to like touch upon them, if there's still information that you want about that. And then the ones that are like listed line by line underneath, they were predominantly from Coralie, which is a good friend who was a dairy farmer at the Newton D, like the Camp Hill farm up here. And now she's, the grain is being grown at Newton D, although she doesn't work there, and she's bought her own mill, and she's really wanting to push for this. Like, she's French as well, and she's used to having like the French system of farming where it is a lot more collaborative and there's a lot more support.
By default, though, they have to be, because the way that succession has worked in France for generations and generations and generations is that every time somebody dies, the farm's broken up and split. So the farms get smaller and smaller and smaller. So collaboration is absolutely essential. Whereas here, we've had a completely different system where it's always the eldest boy that's inherited it, and that's only really just changing. Like, it's such an archaic system, and it's, some people are still clinging on to it, like, so, you know, the eldest boy rather than just the eldest, whatever gender it may happen to be for a start, or rather than just maybe the one that wants to do farming. But yeah, so yeah, there's reasons for that. And I lived for a year in Portugal, and you know, everyone had a few acres. You know, that was the sort of land distribution system. So I think the way that farming culture has evolved is very much down to land ownership. And obviously in Scotland we have like massive unequal distributions of land ownership, and a very small number of people owning huge areas of land. But obviously you don't need me to tell you that. And also our farm payment system, which is area based. So the more land you have, the more money you get. Yeah. So there's no incentive to break your farm up into smaller farms. Therefore, so yeah, I don't know. I think I could probably cover most of 1, 2, and 3. Definitely, you know, the sort of equity sort of question, cheap and affordable versus
I guess breaking off.
You're on mute, Stephen.
Yeah, apparently my question was.
I was just saying Abi was breaking up. I don't know if she is for anyone else.
Can you hear me all right? Yeah, no, right. Turn my video off for a wee bit.
That's it. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I'll just turn the video off for a bit, and so I
had
a little your connection is unstable message. I think it was just me. Yeah, so I can probably cover a lot of the equity question, that sort of cheap, affordable food versus you sort of balance that in the Food Hub story. And also just that engaging with producers and getting it sort of, what's the word, inspiring more local production. So yeah, how did the Food Hub come about? It's probably where to start with this, isn't it? So the food, so obviously, and started selling direct to local people via Open Food Network mainly. So with my little online platform, and also going along to the monthly producer markets when they restarted. So they had approached me and said, "Do you want to come on as a producer? We haven't got any vegetables." I'll try and put my video back on now and see if it's going to be any better. It's always better, isn't it, with videos on. If I start being glitchy again, let me know. So yeah, so I joined as a producer in September 2020. Anyway, whenever we first started running it again. But obviously there were lots of people that didn't want to come to the market because they were still worried about COVID and stuff. Fair enough. So even right then at the very start, we kind of set up an online system for people to pre-order produce from not all, some of the producers at the market, and folk could pre-order the produce and come and just collect it in a box, and we would pack that for them, and that worked quite well. But it was only with like maybe 3 of the producers at the market. The other problem with the market is that I don't know what your farmers markets are like up there, but ours are rubbish, right? It's like, as a vegetable producer, particularly difficult. You've got to harvest a lot to make your store look amazing, and then if the footfall is low, or no one's interested in your lettuce, then that's compost or pig food or chicken food. So it's not, for me, that was a really good community engagement exercise. It was great for getting my face known in the local community, but from a kind of sales perspective, it was totally pointless. The other problem was that all the producers actually on the producer market some of them were local, but their practices were highly dubious. So the meat that they had at the farmers market here came from it wasn't a farmer, it was a butcher. And it wasn't even a butcher in Castle Douglas, it was a butcher from Dalbeattie. And it's like another sort of 20 miles away. And they didn't really know where that meat had come from, and they certainly couldn't vouch for it being organic or sustainable or regenerative or anything like that. And then there was a guy who ran a smokehouse locally, and he's a lovely guy, and his products tasted quite nice. But then he kind of told me that he just went to Costco and got massive blocks of cheese.
Really?
It's like, okay, highly dubious sourcing.
But Abi, do you think that that is because of local producers are running in such a tight cost or margins?
No,
they go into the effort to go into the farmers market. I
think it's just the people that they've had on board. I think it's the culture of producer markets down here is like cakes and sweets and it's not proper food. Anyway, so I stopped. So what happened?
You said that it's not precisely the best options for you. You realize that by your participation there was not the best.
No, but I carried on going, and I was on the committee, and I was trying to help it revitalise. And so the years went by, and we got towards the end of 2021, and it was October 2021, and I'd managed to bring in a few different producers who were actually producing their own. So Irene was on board, and she's one of our regenerative farmers, and she was mostly selling like surplus veg, but also pickles and preserves and herb duck eggs and that kind of thing. So there was a few of us that were actually doing things properly and using high quality ingredients, and it was just because it was a really old school archaic committee that really didn't have an eye on what good food was, and they were quite strict about only having one producer of any kind at the market. And So my friend Gillian was selling, two Gillians actually, both selling really lovely sort of cakey pastry type things. And I remember going to a meeting, and Leslie, who's one on the committee, anyway, probably best not use her name, but anyway, so she's on the committee, and she's like, "Oh, we've been contacted by somebody who wants to bring sort of, you know, tray bakes, brownies, that kind of thing." And I was like, "We've already got Gillian and Gillian who are selling, you know, really lovely stuff. So, you know, maybe a third is too many, given that we already have quite a low footfall." So that was kind of my opinion, but apparently it was not relevant, because in October they brought this new producer in anyway, who, and I wasn't there for this particular market, but he undercut Gillian and Gillian by 50%. And apparently his products were substandard according to people that bought them. But because he was undercutting them, they basically walked away having sold almost nothing. And they were really, really, really pissed off. And fair enough. So they kind of came to me, and they were just like, "Well, this happened." And I was like, "Okay, well, have a meeting with the committee and talk about what happened there." And the committee were basically just like, you know, when I said Gillian and Gillian are going to walk away if we don't sort this out, and because I'm like a solidarity kind of person, I'm going to walk with them. And they were just like, "No, we don't care." I'm like, "All right, fine." That's fine, because, like, you know, nothing was changing here anyway, and it wasn't the kind of market I wanted to be involved with. So at the end of 2021, so the other thing that had been happening in the background was that, like, my friend Naomi, who runs Suey Fields, she produces really lovely, high quality, regeneratively farmed pork and beef, and pastured poultry, and runs a market garden. And she had been contacted by potential customers in this area, who she didn't want to deliver to on a like, because it's quite a long way to come. But she was just like, "Can I, you know, if I could get a stall at the farmers market, then that would work for me." And I'd taken that to the committee, and they were like, "No, because we already have the butcher, and we don't want to upset the butcher, even though we can upset the cake makers." And so that was a no. And then there was somebody else. Oh, Kylie, who runs Barn Barrack Organic. So she does grass-fed organic beef. A lot of hers goes to the sort of mainstream markets, but they were already doing their own direct sales. And she was quite keen to come as well. So these farmers did already exist, and we were connected to them via things like the sort of early stages of the regenerative farming network. And so when we walked away from the market in October 2021, we kind of still wanted to find a way of getting this high quality produce to local people. So we'd kind of, I have to stop there and go rewind a tiny bit. Sorry. It's a long and confusing story, but there's lots of different moving parts to it. At the same time as the kind of market stuff was going on, I Propagate had led on a feasibility study called Good Food in the Glen Kens. This area is known as the Glen Kens, just so that's obvious. Like, so we've got Loch Ken, the River Ken River catchment area, and we are the glens around Loch Ken. So it covers a sort of 6 or 7 villages and about sort of maybe 2,000 people.
Sorry, who did that feasibility study?
Propagate did.
Yeah.
And that was on the back of the Glen Kens Community Action Plan. So the Glen Kens Community Action Plan had been published just before, or was published in the September that I moved here. But the work had been done before I moved here. Sorry about this complicated story.
Was that linked with the CCN, the Community Chartering Network stuff that happened?
No, that was the climate scoping thing.
Okay, cool.
Climate hub scope, which, yeah, it's kind of weird that what happened there.
Well, I want to speak about that, but we can maybe do that at the very end if there's time.
Yeah. So the Community Action Plan had been published in 2020. Several different themes to it. One of them was economy. Sitting in economy, there was this action that said, so it was around local food, and so I contacted the chair of the the sort of community action plan group, and I said, who's leading on that? That sounds really interesting. Making more local food happen sounds like a good thing. And they said nobody. And I was like, oh, okay. So Propagate, off the back of the community action plan, got funding from the Black Rain to do this scoping study, which I've probably got a copy of just over. Yeah. There it is. It's on Propagate's website. That's it there. Good food in the Glen Kens. And we kind of we did lots and lots of survey work at the market and online and with other community groups. We ran various focus groups with producers, with local people, lots of focus groups. We looked into the sort of policy context. Yeah, we just sort of wanted to find out more about what people wanted, what they were already accessing, and what they wanted, and what they wanted to, what their needs were across the board. And we came up with three. So yeah, so the themes that came out were like, things like what is local, how do we make more local food accessible, and information and awareness raising, and sustainable and resilient local food production. So the projects that we kind of went, this is what we want to take forward. The recommendations from that were more food education. Surprise, surprise, always a big one. A hyper local supply chain and a community farm. And so this was published in October 2021, at the same month that the relationship with the market fell to pieces. That's why I had to rewind slightly, because all these things were happening simultaneously. So off the back of this, we then got another small wind farm fund to run or maybe we had some funding left over from it. Maybe that was it. So we ran the festive food hub as a pilot to see if it would work, and we brought in some of the producers that were at the market that we wanted to carry on working with, that were kind of meeting our expectations of good food. And also the people that we knew wanted to be involved, like Naomi at Suey Fields and like Kylie at Barry. And they were a bit further away, but that was still bringing good food into the area. And we ran with the pilot for Christmas 2021, and we had about 60 customers just on that one pilot, and went, well, that kind of seemed to work.
Did your customers come to you, or did you?
It's all on Open Food Network.
Did they get the food delivered, or did they collect it from a central?
They did get it delivered that time, yeah, and they still do in the Glen Kens. They still
Yeah.
do, yeah. So it was called the Glen Kens Food Hub for quite a long time. It only recently changed its name to the Galloway Food Hub. And that's because it's had this kind of really quite nice incremental growth to it. So yeah, we got a bit more funding, about £25,000 actually, through the next round of the Black Race Wind Farm, to basically launch the food hub for its first sort of year and a half, and to employ people to actually oversee the coordination of it, rather than a couple of us sort of running around being volunteers and trying to make it happen. At the same time as juggling millions of other work commitments. So that was when we did a bit of a round of recruitment and employed Leslie and Tamsin, who between them work 20 hours a week. So they came on board to coordinate and administer food hub kind of stuff, and that kind of includes relationship building with food producers. It means that it's the admin of the back end of Open Food Network, it's promotion, marketing, organising getting all the produce to the central location that we use for packing, volunteers for helping packing, volunteers for helping driving. All of that is Leslie and Tamsin's work, plus working towards the entire model becoming financially sustainable, which it isn't yet. It's still very much supported by, I think, probably now 50-50 funding with income and 50-50 income. It's definitely possible to reach break-even point, but we're not there yet. Plus because it's a propagate project. All propagators are paid £18 an hour for project work, so that's actually quite a high wage bill. And Leslie thinks that they probably shouldn't be being paid that much, but because propagate's payment policy is £18 an hour, that's what you get. So yeah, it's kind of hard to argue that you should get less per hour, I think. Nobody wants to be the person that takes that cut. Anyway, so we launched the food hub with its kind of first 1 year pilot, sort of March 2022. And I think at that time we probably had 7 producers on board. So there was myself, Piz and Veg, Irene, Kylie, Naomi, Ruth at Low Old Girth. She's lamb and pork. What else did we have? Maybe there was just 5. Oh, Gillian with her cakes. Only one of the Gillians. The other one is actually a finance officer, so I didn't want to make any more cake.
What about your premises? Did you get that through a partner?
That was the biggest problem actually, was premises, because this area has no warehousing, no sort of workshops or anything like that. It's really, really difficult. So in the end, it was the local hairdresser who has a massive garage that she was only using half of. She was like, you can use this. So we came to an arrangement, and it was really, really good because it's very accessible. You can get vehicles right up to it. And she didn't charge us very much money, but it being a massive garage, it had swallows shitting all over things, and it was quite cold and sort of condensationy as we moved in towards winter. So it's now moved into the Glenkens Community Centre, which was just last year just reopened as a community owned asset transferred locate venue. It had been closed for years before that. So we've kind of gone into their big back room and have a whole separate room with the freezers running permanently in it, and a sort of door code thing where producers can drop their stuff off whenever they like. So it's very much a process of slow evolution, and I'm as you probably have gathered by now, very much of the principle that you just have to get on with it and start somewhere. Like, you can't just wait until you've got all the ducks in a row. You just crack on and things happen, and that's generally been my experience. So over the last, that was 2021 and now in 2024. So yeah, over the last couple of years, I've obviously got out and tried to find more producers to fill the gaps for things that we didn't have, because obviously it was quite meat heavy, quite a lot of pork, lamb and beef, and some veg, through Organic North, which is an organic wholesaler. But we piggyback on the back of Loch Arthur's order. So Loch Arthur is a Camp Hill community place, and they have a massive farm shop and a thriving cafe. They're just outside Dumfries. So we piggyback on their order for organic, whole sort of tatties and carrots, that kind of thing, because no one grows that around here, really. Yeah, and so we now have 25 producers, I think. That's about right. I think it was 23 last time I heard Leslie say that out loud, and I think we've had a few more since then. So that's an increase in vegetable producers a little bit. It's just outside Castle Douglas, on her dad's arable, filled a big tatty, carrots and onions hole in the area, but not enough yet. We've got Bailey Curich with beef, so more beef. Earth's Cross, which is a artisan sourdough bakery in Castle Douglas. So they go on with all their breads stuff. Not Loch Arthur, Ethical Dairy, put their cheese through the food hub. We're already doing milk refill machines in Earth's Cross in Castle Douglas, and also the Auchencairn community shop. And we were kind of looking at doing a milk refill machine up here, but they were like, it's quite a long way to to kind of bring the milk and clean the machine on a regular basis. So we're like, well, why don't you come on? I mean, it means you've got to bottle it yourself, but I mean, come on as on the food hub. So they do that now as well. So we've got organic milk. What else have we got? Lots of pickles and jams and preserves and vinegars and that kind of thing. And some of those producers are like super small, super microgreens as well. Yeah, and so some of them are really, really small. And you know, once you've put on, so for example, in the peak season, I'm putting on 20 bags of kale. That's not a lot. Yeah, it's not a lot of kale. It's 2 kilos basically of kale. So I put that on. When it's gone, it's gone. You know, whereas other people are putting on, you know, they even put on might just put on half a dozen leeks, and that's okay. You know, they don't have to be big producers. Once it's gone, and that's fine. And actually, it's quite educational for the consumers as well to understand that, you know, we have limitations. This is not like Tesco's. You can't just click and get whatever you want. I miss milk almost every time, like almost every time. It's just, I don't really drink milk. Bruce does, but so like we try and get 2 liters, but it sells out within the first couple of days. So unless you've ordered within the first 24 hours, you've generally missed it. Yeah, so we now have a lot of committed customers who are basically waiting at their computers, I assume, at midday on a Friday just to sort of go, quick, get all the nice things. Yeah, because there are, you know, you put, if you know OFN as a selling platform, well, some of you do. Yeah, you kind of put on whatever you're prepared to make or whatever you are having to have to harvest. And then going, sorry.
I was just going to say, I did find them really helpful. I think during lockdown,
Oh, they're brilliant. They're so good.
Loads of webinars that they did. Up here, there's not loads of people registered on it, and there used to be a food hub here that was kind of, it wasn't linked fully with like Camp Hill, but it sold from the grounds there. But then that stopped.
Yeah, then it moved out to what's the other one, East at Anguston. Yeah, when it actually finished, it moved out of Camp Hill and went to East at Anguston. But that was really just for where the producers took it to.
Okay.
Or where you could pick up from, I think.
Right. So the distribution model that we now have, so we still do local deliveries in the Glen Kens, but as the producers came on and evolved, so the sort of communities that we reach out to evolved, and that kind of started with what's there? I can picture a face. Doesn't matter. Anyway, she lives in Gatehouse of Fleet. Gatehouse of Fleet is about an hour's drive from here, and she wants to order, so she ordered and she drove all the way to Dalry to pick up her produce, and then her friends wanted to order, and so she was like, well, I'll pick up your produce. That became our first collection point. So she would basically come and pick up 6 people's boxes and take them down to the Gatehouse of Fleet Community Centre and just hang out in the car park while people come and collected them. So then that turned into another community, Glen Trull, getting in touch and saying we would like to do that. Newton Stewart, and then Castle Douglas, using the Earth's Crust Bakery as a pickup point. Moniaive, Thornhill, Low Aldgirth, which is where Ruth farms, but she also has like a sort of, she does crafts, farm sort of lots of wool crafts, that kind of thing. So has pickup point in her barn. And then we had a really good relationship going with Flourish and Dumfries, who are a kind of artists makers cooperative, but they had like a refill thing at the back going on. So it's like, great, we'll partner with you. So yeah, we now have, I think, 8 or 9 different locations, which are all collection points. And obviously people can come and collect from the Glen Kens Community Centre locally. So if they live and come, if you come and collect it from the community centre, from the packing space, then it's free. Everything else is a flat rate at the moment of £3 delivery. Although obviously it does cost a lot more than that, really, to deliver. Especially if you're delivering to people's doors. Supermarkets don't make any money on delivering to people's doors. God knows how they manage to run those systems. Yeah, so the collection point.
Just a quick question, in case we get, like, in case I forget. You just sort of touched upon it there. Who are your main customers?
Hmm.
Are you getting to the people, like, how do you make it affordable? So, and like, also for how do you make it worthwhile for the producers? Is this, we kind of all know that the farmers markets are a bit expensive. So
Yeah.
how do we, is this an alternative to markets? Is that how you sort of hook the producer in? Is the producer, is the main issue we're not selling enough or there's no route to market? Because I don't grow food, so I don't know.
Okay.
Is that your sort of main issues?
Yeah, I think people don't use the farmers markets because the offering is so poor, but also because they don't necessarily want to go there on a Saturday. You know, got other things to do with their time, you know, that kind of thing. But I guess with your initial question there is about the sort of fairness and equity kind of side of it. So the way a food hub works, the food hub is not buying in produce. Each producer has their own Open Food Network profile. They manage and they update their own stock and their own stock levels. And OFN in the back office, OFN has a button where the producer gives the food hub permission to stock to list its produce. So essentially, it is the producer still selling their produce directly, just unified under one platform. So as a consumer, when you go onto it, you've got everything in front of you, your weekly shopping in front of you. But each of those orders, while it goes through the food hub, still goes back to the producer directly, if that makes sense. So the producers set their own prices. The food hub doesn't set the price. The producers set their own prices. So when it comes to fairness and equity for the producer, they're still able to get the price that they want. The food hub only charges 20% as a sort of admin fee to producers, which is much less than it would be for a shop, if the producer was trying to sell their produce to a shop. And certainly when you stack the figures up, it's less than it would cost a producer to go and spend time preparing for and being at a farmer's market. And they're definitely getting a return on it. And there's no waste in that system either. So, you know, I don't go and harvest the produce until I know how many kilos I'm harvesting. I don't pick all my courgettes, and well, I do actually, but yeah, that's not of course that's not a good example, but yeah, obviously got to pick what's ready as well. Yeah, so it can be quite difficult as a veg producer managing that system, especially as the food hub only opens fortnightly at the moment. Also tricky as a veg producer.
Could I mention something just with what Stephen was asking there, just from an Aberdeenshire point? If in 2021 I was producing 75,000 units of veg,
Yeah.
and I sold most of it. There was a few things just with as things weather, and also because it's only me, so I was kind of starting at 4 a.m. and finishing about 10 o'clock at night every 7 days a week, which wasn't sustainable. Not living on site, so having to drive there, so I was getting up at 3 to drive. But one of the big things was there was for the first time some routes to market, because the farmers markets shut down and hadn't really started again. So you weren't spending that long times at farmers markets for no returns. But there was lots of independent shops, independent cafes looking for food. We were running our own veg box scheme, and that because people were at home more, people were prepared to stay on a veg box scheme, and because they weren't traveling as much, but going away for 6 weeks in the summer. On the whole, the veg box scheme was pretty good. And then we also had 2 food hubs. There was one that was run out of Hudson's Catering, so we were also supplying to them. They're in Blackburn, and there was the Deeside Food Hub. But what became really, really difficult was that everything was running on different platforms. So then you had to work out what you were going to put on where, because you couldn't double sell your veg. So you had to know, and then everything worked on different, some things would open on a Monday and open shut on a Friday. And also, like, there was some cafes that we were basically their only supplier, so we had to kind of prioritize them first. But then if they didn't take everything, and they were really bad at, because they're cafes and they're busy, they're really bad at answering to the last minute. And it was just, my head was ready to explode. And what would have been really good was if you'd had, like, I mean, one of the, we were using Ubi for our own, which is a different kind of one. And then there was, I think it was, I can't remember what it was called, but it was a different food hub running system for the two food hubs. So it wasn't open food network. And what just ended up happening was that I actually sometimes, what the food that got wasted was because I couldn't actually manage to do all the growing and all the management of the harvesting and getting, and I had to deliver all the food. And so it was like, there was good markets, but I didn't have any control of that market, if that made sense. So I was just supplying into this market in a way that was really difficult to manage. And what I would have liked to have done is in 2022 to obviously have somebody to do that job and pay somebody to do that job for me, because I could produce enough food, and I was actually for the first time making a salary. But then obviously Storm Arwen hit, and also everybody, all the local cafes and shops more or less shut apart from one, and the market just disappeared as soon as Aberdeen opened again for business. People just stopped buying local.
It just went back
And
to
then
supermarkets.
end of the year, yeah, so we had damage at the farm. Storm Arwen took our polytunnel and greenhouse, and like major damage. And then on the other side, the market just disappeared, and so then there was no money to hire anyone. So that was like a really big. So I think it's like whatever we put in now has to be sustainable. It has to be coordinated so that food can move between systems, you know, because if there is wholesalers, small wholesalers looking for staff, and there is direct families looking for staff. And the other interesting thing for us is with our veg box scheme, and even on markets, we actually aren't that much more expensive now than say Tesco's. So actually we deliver more to the lower end scale on our veg box in a CSA than we do to high end people.
Yeah,
which is an interesting change.
Oh, also just echoing a lot of that. Yeah, I mean, we did find that the while lockdown restrictions were in place, it was easy to find a local market and local customers, and as things reopened, you know, I think market gardeners across the board, across the whole of the UK, saw their sales plummet, where they had kind of, you know, really peaked during lockdown because everybody was at home, as you say. But then lockdown restrictions easing has coincided with the kind of cost of living economic meltdown, and that's like brought the hospitality industry to its knees. Well, the COVID and the sort of cost of living crisis. Yeah. So all those kind of like the sort of wholesale markets are kind of it's not obliterated. They are still there, but they do
for us,
exist.
It's annoying because our best wholesale market is 50 miles away, and though it was like the end of a long chain for us, it's now the only one in the chain.
It's hard. So things have changed quite a lot, I guess, over the last few years. And you know, if anyone's adaptable and flexible and dynamic, it's probably small scale producers, but it's, you know, you still got to
what cost.
Which is why the food hub is a really good model, because it kind of, you know, for having two people whose job it is to manage all the marketing, etc. Obviously, you know, as a producer, you can still do your own marketing, but the food hub's doing loads on behalf of all of us, and because it's bringing lots of producers together in one place, it's a really good way of raising the profile of, you know, what are we talking about? We're talking about good local food, agroecological, regenerative, organic, and there's a whole education piece that runs alongside that's kind of, you know, meet the producer events, tasting events, working with high profile chefs in the area to do a sort of, you know, tasting dinner that people are paying for, obviously, to come to, you know, pop up sort of things at community events to spread the word, that kind of thing. So we're doing stalls at other markets now with a sort of bringing a lot of the producers together to sort of share a stall together, but with a food hub kind of tagline on it. So yeah, it's kind of doing a lot of the grunt work, but the producers are still very much leading that, because we have 3 producer meetings every year, where all the producers meet and can help feed into development and processes and talk about how, you know, how to move things forward. And we have the steering group, which meets 4 times a year, which is made up of producers, customers, and volunteers on the hubs. So they're all also helping to guide the strategic direction of the hub.
So the hub has a steering group.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask quick questions? Is there any involvement with like better food traders?
Most of us who are vegetable producers are registered at Better Food Traders.
Okay, cool.
They don't tend to register meat producers. I think it's mainly it's a veg thing, Better Food Traders, but it's not a platform. It's a network.
Yeah.
Just on the platforms though, there is some work going on between Open Food Network and what's it, Ubi, and another platform as well. There's 3 that are doing some work. What do they call them? I'm not very techie, but there's some ways that different websites speak to each other, so that you don't have to pick and choose which platform you're going to use, or decide as a producer whether you're going to put that much on that platform and that much on that platform. They are coordinating, they are cooperating between them, because they're all quite cooperative platforms, to create a language that all the websites, the platforms can share, so that they're pulling the products and quantities from one central location. I'm not describing that very well.
Sounds
But
good, isn't it?
What are they called? Do you know what they're called?
No, but I know what you mean. It means that they can talk to each other, and that you can have a platform, and then it could disperse. Because I know we don't have a Ruby anymore, but when we did, it wasn't really because they weren't bad. It just didn't work for the way people were buying, and in Aberdeen. But you could also link your website to your Ubi, so that Ubi would only be like a selling arm.
Yeah.
So I think that's so it's how
so
they
it's
link.
happening. They are doing it, which is quite exciting.
They're pretty good. All the kind of Open Food Network and Ubi, they're all kind of quite committed to this kind of way, so they're easy to work with, because they've got good.
They want to do the right thing, don't they? So watch that space. I don't know how far into development it is. I went to a session at ORFC on it. She was one of the speakers. So there was also what's his face from Hodmadod's talking about pulses and stuff as well. So
Big Barn is the other one. I've just looked it up online.
Big Barn again. That's not a platform for selling though. I don't think it's a directory. It's a directory, not a selling platform.
No, but if you're speaking about the collaboration thing, I think I'll just put the link in that I found.
It's not for food data collaboration. That's it. Yes. Yeah. That's what they call. It's like I got a bit on paper. Brilliant. Anyway,
can I ask one other?
So just because Stephen asked about customers, and I was talking about fairness and equity, and I talked about it for the producer end, but not the consumer end so far anyway. So the prices are set by the producers, and obviously what we're driven by is a fair price for producers, because as we all know, our sort of food system as it is doesn't give a fair price to producers, and I need to work out for a set of resources that we're designing anyway, what what out of a whole pound, what does the producer get? But it's probably about 2 to 4%, I think, at supermarket prices, or within the supermarket system. So obviously that does, to a lot of people, they kind of think that makes the produce more expensive, but as Mary said, it actually is quite comparable these days, especially for vegetables. Especially vegetables, because food prices have gone up so much in supermarkets. You'll find that the prices aren't that different. They are for meat. That's one of the big differences.
I think that's because of the feed for meat. I mean, the advantage that vegetables have is that we've got a pretty closed farm system, so we're not really subjected to the increase in prices. That we're not buying in much. We've got we mostly make our own compost now, fertility, so it's only really green manures and
I mean,
see.
so are our meat producers, because the whole point of the regenerative system is it's grass fed and no
Yeah,
input.
but
It's
abattoirs,
just more a more expensive form of production, just generally.
yeah,
So
butchering stuff is much more expensive. It's much easier to harvest, so we get that both sides. That because our pork is really difficult because we've got to take out of Aberdeenshire. There's no abattoirs, so by the time you add in that cost, that's the one that really out. We have a small amount of feed because our ground is not completely regenerated yet, but yeah, I think it's the kind of time you can actually grow veg easier on less regenerated soil than you can feed an animal completely.
So so what the fix is for that? So we've got a few things that we've put in place in the food hub to try and make a fairer system, but it's all funding dependent. It's a funding dependent system. So until we've kind of fixed the inequalities within, well, until we've dismantled patriarchal systems and capitalism, basically, then we're still going to have the fundamental problems of cost of living, and that's all bound up in in housing and energy costs and everything else, and how much people spend on food because they're struggling to get by in every other area. So there's all this systemic stuff that we can't fix as the food hub anyway, but we have to recognize it and know that it's there. So what we are trying to do, the first thing we did was put in a pay it forward scheme, so kind of you can buy a donation to the local pantry. So that starts at £1. You can just add more pounds, and then the food. So rather than that money going to the local community pantry, what the food hub does is says to the pantry, what do you need, and they'll buy produce from the producers to then donate back to the pantry, right? So that usually is eggs and carrots. And and so the producers are still benefiting from that, and the pantry gets organic, locally produced, sustainable food out of it. We've also just got funding to pilot, so the whole February all delivery fees were waived, so nobody had to pay a delivery fee, and that was funded by sort of a weird small fund that approached us and said, do you want £2,500? And so they were able to kind of implement a few ways to sort of increase accessibility. And then the other one we're sort of developing is a voucher scheme, so asking people to sort of self-refer, self-identify as struggling, but also referrals from sort of schools and nurseries, from the community pantry. The pantry's in Castle Douglas. It's 15 miles away, but it's still, that's the one that people use. Used to be a food bank. So they can refer people as well, or suggest people who would benefit from this scheme. So we've got a certain number. I think it's like maybe, well, a certain amount set aside for that, and it's not going to last forever, and it's very much a pilot, and it is very much funding dependent, and obviously requires staff to administer it as well. But yeah, it's trying to sort of increase the affordability and the accessibility, without compromising the sort of fairness for the producer, which is really integral to the system that we're trying to create. So it's not perfect.
Going to get everything. You're obviously not going to get all the produce you need to give someone a weekly shot, but it's the supplement, isn't it? Like their diet.
It's almost everything, to be honest.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah, eggs, cheese, milk, breads, vegetables, meat.
Okay.
That's what I live off. All of those things.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, quite
else.
limited to the produce that you get. They're quite varied.
Honey.
I've put a link.
Jams.
There's a link to the Galloway Food Hub. You've got the list of producers on Propagate's website, so I've put a link in that on the Google Doc.
The Galloway Food Hub has its own website. Have you found that?
I've just clicked on the link now, but just saying, I'd popped it in as an easy reference. So, can I ask a question?
They launched their own website, and at the moment, just a final thing, I guess, on before I forget about this. can't see that in the chat anyway, so I'll just put this one in.
Oh no, in the
There you
Google, I put it on the Google Docs.
Oh, okay.
I've made a list.
There's the Galloway Food Hub link in the chat as well. Yeah, so so because the Food Hub has now, so in terms of where we've got to, where we started with kind of that 50 for the festive food back in 2021, and then our regular order cycles were yielding about 25 customers initially, and that is now around we've managed since Christmas to kind of only fortnightly at the moment. If that was weekly and 100 customers, then we could probably reach break-even point, just about. There will still need to be some funding to support it, and it's still a social enterprise, obviously. So the Food Hub is now at this point where it's kind of thinking about constituting as a separate organisation, and sort of leaving the propagate nest and flying free. and that's kind of good. That's kind of what was always envisaged, actually, was that it would become its own entity. And certainly there are smaller funds that it could tap into that it can't do as part of Propagate, because Propagate's now got an annual turnover of over 150,000 and stuff. So there's kind of chicken and egg kind of thing. But yeah, there's smaller funds that it could access as a smaller organization, but could still have a relationship Propagate to access some of the bigger funds potentially. So yeah, I think that answers most of the questions on the sheet, but other stuff as well. What were you going to ask, Fran?
I've got a couple of quick questions, so don't forget them. One was, is there many CSAs down your way, and how does
None.
that? Okay. None at all. Okay. Yeah.
There's not even any box schemes, really. There's like all of us who sell produce do a sort of pick and mix system. Or sell to directly to shops or to cafes and restaurants.
Okay.
So yeah, there's no CSA at the moment.
Okay.
Yet. It's on. I mean, we would like there to be. It's definitely an aspiration, and something that we are planning to set up at some point.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. And then the other thing was obviously more just of a question, like all your websites look really good. Have you got one person that you've got a great connection with that does the websites? Because obviously
which ones look really good?
Well, I'm thinking like probably one, and then I just had a look at the Galloway Food Hub, and I just wonder, is it who manages your websites? Is it because at the moment like FFA doesn't even like getting that information out there on like a decent website is.
And we've also got D&G Good Food is the social media entity for the Sustainable Food Partnership as well. I do. Yeah, I don't do the Galloway Food Hub, but it's on a platform that I know how to use, and I could do it easily. But I do the Propagate one and Sustainable Food Partnership one, and it's easy. It's so easy. Once you know how, it's easy. Yeah. It's kind of a package that comes with the domain. It's really intuitive. There's lots of drag and drop, lots of what they call widgets. That's just where you put text and images, and lots of pre-formed layouts and templates that you just put your own stuff into. And if you're just even a little bit techy, you know how to use different platforms, it's actually quite easy.
What's that?
I mean, it's definitely a skill I've had to learn. Hang on, my daughter is at the door. Hello. We're going to Dumfries at about 1:30. Oh, you wanted to catch a bus, didn't you? Yeah, I think we'll be fine for 1. Okay. Yes, that's fine. Yeah, I know it's 12 o'clock. Thanks. We're going to Dumfries. Cool. Well, he's got a bus to catch. I've got a meeting. Yeah.
Stephen, just what platform you use?
So what was the? I wanted to log in. So, the food partnership website is on 123, and the Propagate website's on names.co.uk. Those are our domain hosters. Is that the word I'm looking for? Domain hosts. The actual software they provide, I wouldn't know.
That's fine.
It's the package that comes with it.
Yeah, no, I'll have a look at those two. That's fine.
Yeah.
Squarespace is quite easy.
It's probably similar. It's probably really similar
Yeah.
to Squarespace. Yeah.
Squarespace is quite easy. It's the same.
Okay.
You kind of pop the text into predetermined.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I've managed to use and change mine. It's like, wow. It didn't explode.
I mean, there's definitely a few things that I've learned over time that have frustrated when I first started doing this. And looking after the websites have really frustrated me. It's just like,
yeah, the only thing I've used is WordPress.
How do you do that? Why is it doing that? And then you just sort of learn the little tricks. And
okay, I'll have a look at those. That'll be a big help. I think it's about 4 clicks to get to our webpage on the council website. So
add a new. Oh, that's no good. Yeah. And have you got social connection is unstable? Do you have social media channels for Fair Food Aberdeenshire? Have I frozen again?
we've got
Did I freeze again?
we've got Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Though I've never used the Twitter page, but I think sometimes the Facebook ones come up on Twitter or something. But I've got we're putting in a application to the long-term unemployment scheme to get someone to do a bit of communications for us, newsletters, social media. I just post stuff when I can. It's just, I know it only takes a day to schedule posts.
I think one of the things we discussed as well is like making sure that all the partners within the partnership are sharing information about what each other, what the other organizations are doing. And we've just hired a new PR and comms person through NESCAN, and that's something we really want to make sure we're doing, like all the members, and then NESCAN, of which obviously Fair Food Aberdeenshire is, and vice versa, that there's just always highlighting what other people are doing.
Yeah, NESCAN newsletters are great, really good.
Thanks.
So just mindful that we've only already got another 15 minutes or so. What have we not covered? What have we not covered from your
I think that's it.
questions?
I haven't typed everything about the Food Hub in, but I've put a note that the Food Hub chat starts at 1 hour 40 minutes into the recording, because I think the way you've just like talked through it all, it'd be better if, I think particularly for those questions, Coralie listens to what you said rather than trying to read from notes. But I will add the notes to that.
What were the other bits?
The bit that I think when I initially contacted you, if I scroll right up to the top, was I was wanting to ask a bit more about the food, like the collaboration with the Climate Hub, but I think let's just leave that in a conversation for maybe another time. We had the borders.
You're way ahead for the Climate Hub anyway,
Yeah, because NESCAN was one of the pilot ones.
I think you're way ahead with the Climate Hub stuff.
Yeah, but it was just how
the originals. Yeah.
But then
so I mean, the D&G Climate Hub. So, I've got a bit of lag going on.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Have I got a bit of lag going on?
A little bit.
Yeah. It was.
Yeah, I'm just turning my video off.
It's okay. Well, it was more.
Turn the video off again.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. It was more specific.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Oh no, Francesca's frozen there. Oh no, she's back.
It was more that there hasn't been anyone really focusing on the connection with like food and what's been going on with NESCAN. So that's something I'm trying to really pick up on. So that was a conversation I was wanting to have, but I think we're going to try and get a meeting in the diary with NESCAN and with the D&G hub.
Yeah.
Anyway, so maybe it's better to save that conversation
Yeah.
then.
I mean, like, so I guess well, I can just tell you briefly. Propagate was written into the D&G Climate Hub application for this year, just finishing now, and again for next year. So this year's only been 6 months. The funding kind of kicked in like October or something like that. So the Climate Hub funded the local food gatherings. So it's kind of the biosphere's commitments, but it's come under the Food Hub now, and also Propagate has been funded by the Climate Hub through the community food network activity. So for Dawn and Lucy, who are the community food network coordinators, they only work like 10 hours a week each anyway. But the Climate Hub covers part of their costs on the basis that they are then getting out and meeting and supporting groups that are doing food and climate kind of stuff.
Okay.
So that's kind of like one-to-one support as well as networking events. And then the small grants, which you probably have. Do you have small grant schemes? Or that's supported quite a few food related activities as well.
Okay. Is that the Lucy that turned out I knew from when I worked at the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust?
No,
no,
she supports me with a little bit of back end for the Regenerative Farming Network pages on Propagate.
Okay.
So she's designed the resource library and does a lot of infographic kind of stuff. But no, Lucy Alderslow, actually. Lucy Alderslow is the DG's Community Food Network West coordinator, and then Dawn is East. But like I said, they only have like 10 hours a week each. Yeah. So Propagate is supported by the Climate Hub to deliver part of that. We've written their application as a partner, basically.
Okay.
Could I just ask one quick thing?
Yeah.
Would you say that the establishment of the partnerships or the stuff that Propagate's doing, or the Food Hub and stuff in Dumfries and Galloway, is that increasing your entrance to, or people that are prepared to direct sell? So it might be people that have been in the commodities market before and moved across. Because I feel that is a bit of a chicken and egg thing here, that you're not going to get your numbers up. You're not going to break even if you can't get enough people to come along or being producers. But if you don't have any way for producers to make ends meet, there's very few people who can live on nothing. It's a trick. But particularly in high housing areas, like you're saying, high cost of rural living, etc. I just wondered, are you seeing that now from things maybe that Glasgow that's been going a lot longer in local food, or is that still like a major issue?
I think so the number of producers has increased, and a lot of those are folk who have or do currently still have other sales avenues. They're just choosing to sell some of their produce through the Food Hub. The other thing that the Food Hub actively does and intentionally does is buys in stuff that there's a gap for, so that you can buy chocolate on the Food Hub, you can buy coffee on the Food Hub. We're never going to get locally produced coffee and chocolate, but you can get herbal tea that aren't being produced locally at the moment. We buy in some stuff from what's it, crowd farming, the sort of
I know you.
Oranges and lemons and that kind of stuff.
Selling from Europe, etc.
Again, we're not going to get those grown locally either. But I guess the idea is to buy in stuff that potentially could be being produced locally to show that there's a demand for it, to then inspire somebody to start producing it or selling it via the Food Hub. Because a lot of it is people just not thinking there's a demand for that product when there kind of clearly is, or we can demonstrate there is a demand for it. So coffee and chocolate and oranges aren't a good example, but the herbal teas, kind of thing. Actually, chocolate,
herbs and things like that. Or
cut
different-
flowers as well.
Yeah.
We're going to start doing cut flowers.
Mm.
We've got somebody coming on doing cut flowers for this season.
And do you buy in pulses and grains and things like that as well?
Not
or not?
yet. I think we are looking at working with Hodmadods to do that. Yeah, and yeah, I think maybe there was some stuff on last month. So yeah, but because some of us here do a Green City order. Which is, you've got Highland Whole Foods is probably your equivalent up there, isn't it? So
Green City do come up here. Yeah,
as
you
well.
can
That's
get
good.
Green City up here. Yeah.
So I'm part of a food buying group. That's between 6 households, but obviously not everyone's going to set up a food buying group where they do a big collective order. So yeah, so the food hub is looking at buying in bulk from Green City and selling, a half kilo of lentils or whatever. But I think there's definitely a kind of potential to work with Hodmadods, and yeah, to demonstrate. We had a big conversation about beans yesterday, beans and pulses, and sort of producing enough to then sell in the food hub locally. Obviously, nobody is doing that locally. Yeah, but it can be done. People are growing peas for animal feed.
Yeah, well, that's the only thing you can get data on from SAC. You can only get data on how much. Well, to be honest, in the SAC, you can only get data on how much veg has been grown for animal feed, because all of the rest of it DEFRA. But
it's mad, isn't
but
it?
yeah, so it's really hard to do the calculations of what you actually need to grow to provide for your, because none of the actual basic data is there. But that's what I'm working to just now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This just reminds me of these funding applications. So I'm looking for funding for the growing space. How many people are you going to feed? Like, I have no idea.
More than
I'm supposed to
5
work that out.
in the town. Yeah.
200, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and it's also looking at when you do those kind of things, it's really hard to say, because it's on maybe like we do a 38-week season, which is not a year-round season. But if we could store, we could do the year-round growing now, which you've been told always that you can't do year-round growing. Well, you can. You just need more help than you're getting, but you're not going to have year-round growing that's going to be at this level. You're going to that, and that's a challenge. That's a challenge for food hubs for veg as well. It's much easier to provide a steady supply of meat than it is to provide a steady supply of veg, even seasonally.
Yeah. So yeah, chicken and egg, absolutely. But yeah, you've got to show demand in order to create the demand in order to inspire the production. So I think it's possible. It's a slow burn, isn't it?
Yeah.
All these things are a slow burn, and obviously we need change now. So it's quite frustrating. But got to start somewhere.
I think
we'll pilot it really small in one of the areas, 6 areas around Aberdeenshire. I think that's the way to do it, really small.
Yeah, I mean, just start small. I think just get started. Don't get hung up on like we must have all produce. If you've got buy-in from customers who understand what you're trying to do, then
we're going to get a coordinator, hopefully some funding for someone to coordinate it. I think the first hurdle that I'm having is that hook, as I say, to get producers interested. Why is it going to be worth their while? But keep chipping away.
It's profile as well as profit.
Do you help market
profit
their
and profile?
Do you help market their produce? Is that maybe something the food hub would do?
Absolutely does. Let me just find the Galloway Food Hub. So the Facebook page is probably the main one. Galloway Food Hub has like 806 followers.
Oh, wow.
So that grows all the time. That was just 800 like a few days ago. So that's so there's lots. If you have a look at the Facebook page, whoops, for that, I'll just put it in the chat as well. If you haven't found it already. Yeah, so we've got a volunteer who posts things all the time. So just is it Shrove Tuesday? Oh, is that next Tuesday?
No, it's Tuesday. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, there's a volunteer who does the socials for the Galloway Food Hub, and that's promoting everyone's products plus other stuff about local good food that we think is worth sharing.
I know one of the things that the Better Food Traders, when I was speaking to them, is that they said you have to have rules. It's a good idea. So have you established a written set of rules? For maybe for who can be the producers,
yes.
or how you certainly within the veg system, you get a lot of undercutting by people that don't have to make any money from their veg, which is pretty much like competing with a supermarket inside your food hub, which was something that was really difficult for us. The last time we kind of managed okay because our produce was so superior, and because it was inside where people had well, it's true.
No,
I mean,
that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, had been harvested that morning as opposed to 10 days ago. You know, so in that way, it was superior. Not
so
everything.
we do have rules. We ask all producers to fill in a form to tell us all about how they produce foods, their kind of ways of production. Are they organic? Are they agricultural, regenerative? What does that mean to them? Soil health, fairness, sort of living wage, packaging, that kind of thing. So sort of we ask that, and other ingredients they might be buying in, are they fairly traded? Are they organic, such as cocoa powder, for example, that kind of thing. So yeah, they have to self approve. We're not going out and literally checking.
Obviously that's.
And then we ask producers can set their own prices, but we give them guidance such as the Soil Association's horticulture price data, that's how I set mine. I kind of take the average and go a little bit lower because I'm not certified organic. So it's kind of So we kind of advise producers to set their prices against the data that's out there, that's kind of crowdsourced data. So undercutting shouldn't happen if everyone's more or less setting their prices around that. There will be some variation still, but there's that.
Varies. I mean, it's obviously been a big issue here for farmers markets, undercutting in other areas where the people selling at market don't need to sell food at a price that is a fair price for a producer. They sell it at a price that's funded, and that really put farmers markets down in this area, not up, because people stopped coming because of that.
It's not okay, is it?
No, it's impossible, and trying to explain that to people is really hard. But it's a major problem in the summer months, which is why we stopped selling at farmers markets.
Not a good way to sell produce.
No, and actually people just haven't come back really to farmers markets, because there's a weekly one at Torfin's, and some weeks I can only sell like £30 a veg, which is like at £15 stall prices before work is, and it's that's the most, so that's not food access or food poverty, because that's the most well paid area in Aberdeenshire.
Right. We did do a feasibility study last year. Only last year on sort of the direction for the food hub and development and such like. And one of the questions that was asked was income brackets, and whether they were, what their income bracket was, and whether they were already customers of the food hub. And really interestingly, a lot of people in the lower income brackets were the higher spenders on the food hub. So it's not so much about
income,
salary and income, it's about morals and what you choose to spend your money on.
Very much so.
But I don't think that's downloadable anywhere, so I can try and share it with you to remind me to do that.
That would be great. I'm conscious of the time, and if you need to head off or anything, Abby,
get a bite to eat before we go. Probably I've got a health meeting with public health, so I should probably not be wearing turquoise leggings. Oh.
Yeah, put on your pink
They
ones.
look good for your health.
I know you never know what
Don't get dressed properly.
the bottom half's doing when you're online, do you? But
Like,
yeah. I just want to say thank you very much for like spending 3 hours with us. And yeah, Mary, Steve and Anna, are you happy to stay on just for 5 minutes after Abi goes? There was another couple of things I just wanted to touch base with. But is there anything else at all before Abi heads off?
No, just
No,
to
just
say
a thank you
very
from me
much.
as well. It's really
No
interesting.
worries.
Good talk.
Has been great. Yeah.
Hopefully it's been helpful in some way. And I guess, once you've processed and digested and, maybe there might be some more questions that come out of this and we could maybe have another sort of hour follow-up or just emails. I find conversation easier than just endless reams of typing, to be honest, more fruitful. So yeah, if there is anything that comes up out of this, then we could do a sort of follow-up. If you want.
That'd be really great, even especially for like Natalie that can come, or Coralie, just to once they've maybe watched the recording or looked at the Google Doc. I think that would be helpful. So yeah, thank you.
All right, no bother.
And
have a nice afternoon.
Yeah, keep up the great work.
You guys too. See you soon.
Okay, cheers.
Bye, Abi. Thank you.
Oh gosh, lots of information. I hope you found that
great.
Helpful. I think having a follow-up would be good because there is a lot to digest. Or if you think actually I didn't really maybe get out of that what I wanted to. I think key points for me were like there's been quite a lot of feasibility studies that they've done, but obviously having Propagate as that umbrella organization to facilitate that's good. And then her mentioning, they've got a volunteer that does the social media, and yeah, Abi is like an absolute Trojan at filling out funding applications and filing them. And I think having her as that driver has been a big key thing. And it is the art of filling out application forms a lot of the time, I think, to make some of this stuff happen. And also the fact that they've got 2 people employed 20 hours a week for facilitating the food hub, obviously makes a big difference.
I think paid staff are important. They really are. Eastside Food Hub was great, but it really relied on volunteers and people being generous with their time. And they were, but
yes,
I think no, carry on.
No, please, I just interrupted you. Hold me.
Oh no, I was just saying that I just think if you're going to improve your system, you have to have opportunities for paid employment in that system, because otherwise you don't get young people in. I mean, one of the big problems we've had with any new entrants to growing is that the salaries are so low that they just end up taking the training and then moving in areas because they just can't. They might be very enthusiastic, but they can't afford to live.
Especially when you've got to maybe own a vehicle to be able to drive to work if it's a little bit rural. And it just doesn't stack up, and while you've got an new entrant, you're quite often paying somebody twice what you're paying yourself. So then what's the incentive for them to then, cut the wages in half to get somebody else in? So it's a challenge at this end of the system. So I think having a support network for routes to market is really important. Yeah, I agree. I hope the notes I took, all right, I need to read over them. I feel that there were some key funding things she mentioned there, like the Scottish Government Knowledge Transfer Innovation Fund. I noted that down. And obviously match funding, so Sustainable Food Partnerships being in the early years the main funder to a certain degree, but then getting match funding. Have you, Stephen, in the funding like stuff you've been looking for, chatted much with Foundation Scotland the funds that they manage for up in the northeast.
Sorry, I think I froze there for the first part of your question. You should repeat that.
I just said for funding up here have you had any conversations much with Foundation Scotland and spoke to them about some of the funds that they manage?
Not for a while. Foundation, was that through Vattenfall, maybe?
They host the Vattenfall.
Vattenfall, that was the last dealings I had with them, and that was mostly Debbie, to be honest. That they funded the Huntley Food Pod. I think that was a mix between that and some wind farm funding. I've not direct. I think I did in a previous job, but not for a while.
Well, maybe that's a conversation you and I can have now that like FFA is a NESCAN member, and we can support you. Maybe we put in some kind of application through Foundation Scotland to apply for funding to be able to run maybe like the
Coordinator.
Either coordinator role or like the food net events, like similar what they do in Dumfries and Galloway in November. So if we could arrange a meeting to chat about that, and then we can incorporate, maybe funds to pay small producers to be the people that.
I just put in about 5 or 6 funding applications for the garden coordinator at Peterhead, and now I'm having to think about my role because it's only funded till 2025. So that'll be my next funding search, probably for myself.
Okay, well, if you do want help with that,
I think through a little bit of restructure, I'm not saying much at the moment, but through a bit of restructure within the partnership, I think there'll be more resources available to me from Aberdeenshire Council going forward. That'll change things a little bit, even such as hiring someone that can do social media and newsletters.
And Steve, about the restructuring, how are you envisioning to do it? On your own, or with just meeting up with the heads of the different subgroups, or with everybody, or how?
I think our next meeting is going to be a face-to-face, and probably do some work around the Good Food Nation plan consultation. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
So I would probably try and get everyone together for that one.
Okay.
I'm going to put out the new kind of looking group this week. No, this is Friday next week. And I'll probably chair that group, which will feed into the steering group for the partnership. Rather than having the partnership 5 different groups, it's manageable.
Yes, it's like
and no one wants to go to all these meetings, let's be honest.
Can I ask, have the minutes been sent out from the steering group meeting that happened on the 30th?
Not yet, no. Rianne does all that now. She sets up the meetings because for some reason, it's wrong on my email account, so I can't.
I've got the Peterhead date in my diary for the Good Food Nation.
I'm going to go with that, I think.
Me too. One, just because obviously of all this, but also Peterhead's within my geographical area that I have to cover in my NESCAN role. So I thought it's like a double match.
The consultation that is in March, sorry?
I know, a double match. There's the Peterhead, I can't remember the date, but it was information.
It's 18th of February or something, is it? I don't know.
Yes, I learned also that there would be a Good Food Nation consultation in Peterhead on the
Good Food Nation. I think it's going to be Nourish that delivered the consultation, but it's going to be pretty much written by the Scottish Government. So the Nourish are just delivering it. It's not going to be. They're not going to be asking the questions. So that's why we're thinking about just doing our own one. And Nourish are going to send out some material to help guide us. Basically, this is what we would have asked. Sly of them to do that, I think, but I quite like that.
Well, you know what? We just did that last night through NESCAN for the heat in buildings bill. So Scottish Government like a set amount of questions that they were wanting to ask, but they were looking for host organizations to run it. So we did like a Zoom one last night through NESCAN and to gather that information. So if that's a kind of a similar thing, then again, I can support with that if you want.
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to do next. That'll be deadline's April, so we'll do that maybe we'll have in March.
Mhm.
Yeah, the Peterhead one's on Monday, the 18th of March in the afternoon. One other quick thing I just want to raise before I'm probably gonna have to scoot, but I don't know if you've come across this woman called Kay. I can't remember if it's Thomas or Thompson in the food market. They're now doing in Aberherder, and they're doing like meet the producer and things like this. Is it the Foggy Nook?
Yes, Foggy Nook.
I'll send you a link to that.
Rings a bell, yeah.
She's basically, I think, kind of almost hand-picked local producers, and she's really trying to push for getting the foodie thing happening up there. But it's just when Abi mentioned something about meet the producer events, and that's what they're doing at the Foggy Nook as well. So give me 2 seconds. But her husband's a farmer, and I think her background is she's an artist. And so she's got like a kind of a rounded approach to what she's doing up there. 2 sec.
So is it Mary or Vary?
Oh, I answer to either, but most people call me Mari now. But I used to be known as Vary, so
Vary, yeah. Well, I had a friend called Vary, and you spelled it the same, and I thought it was Vary.
Yeah. So, my granny was a
could-
Galaxy, so she
Yeah,
used
yeah.
but then I ended up spelling with an H, so then it gets really confusing with people. I'm easy either way, so
Okay.
don't like Mahari. That's the only one.
Yeah,
Mary.
Yeah.
I think for me, I always remember the first time I saw Siobhan, it was like, who's Sayaban? It's a weird name.
Yeah, just to so I had years of like, what's your name? And then I called my oldest daughter Ailey just to kind of pass it on. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to. You pass the curse on. Yeah.
Eyelid loads of times. Yeah.
Foggy Nook.
My wife's got a lot of Irish friends. They've got some crackers of names.
Oh yeah. I used to be I used to do a lot of stuff at the RGU, and a lot of the Irish people come over to do occupational therapy because it's really small. You only get in Trinity and Ireland, and EFAs and all that. Yeah, there's loads.
They're nothing how they look, are they?
Yeah. Used to, yeah.
No, but we'll have to stay in touch. Considering what we're thinking about doing going forward. Yeah, I'll have a think after that and maybe do a follow-up email. A lot to think about.
Yeah.
Let's
have a digest. I'll email everyone if you want next, or have a digest and then just keep in that email thread possibly that I sent up, or start a new one. I'll send the recording to Natalie and Coralie as well. And I don't know, Stephen, do you want to share it with the FFA like steering group? I doubt anyone.
Yeah, I said I would share it with them.
Watch a 3-hour recording, but you know, that's their
put it on the FFA if that's okay with everyone.
Yeah. But that Kay Thompson, I think it'd be worth speaking to Stephen. I'll try and get her contact details, or if not, just message her through the Foggy Nook Facebook page, just because again, it's someone doing like food hub producer kind of stuff in the area. Also, I don't know if Barry, that's going to be too far away a market for you. Aberherd is still about a 45-minute drive from where I am, so but it's a really nice venue. Okay.
Yeah. The other thing is I could probably start collating who are the small producers in the area. I have quite a lot of links, so I'll do that. It maybe won't be a complete list, but it might be somewhere to start if you want to know who the small to medium scale producers are. And I'm also putting together just the stuff. There's lots of stuff coming from around from either like policy or through the ALWA feasibility studies, and I'm trying to make them fit for the area. So take them from a national level and make assumptions. Some of them are around, a lot of them are around horticulture. So what would, if we were going to have like 20% of the import reduced, which is the kind of LWA campaign to have 20 less horticulture imported. What would that actually mean for what we'd need in the way of resources of land and things like that? So so who would need to be employed and how much land we would need. So I'm trying to work that out. I'm having to make a few large assumptions, but because data is so difficult to get, because it's not really produced. But I'm using some of Highlands data. They've got a bit better data than we have because they've got more market gardens. So I'll share that. I'll hopefully have that done by next week, and that will maybe feed into what people are looking at growing communities and stuff, because it doesn't have to be on a commercial basis, but it needs to be on a production basis at least. Or
that sounds like a great student project or something.
Yes.
There's I don't know if you're needing to do stuff like that. There's a postgrad course at Aberdeen University. I can give you his contact details. But he's always looking. It's about sustainable development, and that can include food. And they're always looking. Students are always looking for interesting bits of work to do. So yeah. I'll pass on his email.
And also I've been thinking something around those lines. So it could be also interesting to well, just to continue the conversation on that.
Yeah, well, we'll catch up.
Okay. But well, I think I need to go to feed the family.
All of us are a bit like, whoa, for looking at the screen. But
no, it has been amazing.
Well, for a Friday.
Yeah, not bad for a Friday. I'm pretty done.
I'm done.
I am pleased though that came together, because we'd spoke about this a wee while ago. So nice one, Stephen, for putting in the application, and it all happening. But yeah, that's just keep in contact by email. What I'll maybe do is when I come off this, I'll just do an email between us four and Natalie Corley, and then share the recording that way, and then at least we've all got everyone's emails all together. Anna, can you just quickly send me your email again, because I was trying to find it earlier from some of the Facebook sorry,
there may be an old one there.
Yes,
the Mar partnership.
Shall I do it now?
I need to go to Lou, so I'm going to go.
No worries.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
Bye,
nice to meet you, Barry. Cheers.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.